And now let's do the swap. So first I want to swap the token from ETH to any ERC20 token. So I'll click on that. This is the ETH, and let's select the next token. So I want to swap with something else. So what I will do, I'll come here. So I'm going to pick the SIBA Inu. So click on that. So this is the swap I'm going to do. So I want to provide the ETH value. So I'll provide 0.01 and it's going to give me this 100 SIBA EU. So if I provide this, if I click on the swap, it's going to make the transactions, and here the MetaMask popped up. Absolutely amazing. Let me show you that what you're going to build, how you can create a token marketplace where you can allow user to come and swap the token and they can use it in multiple projects. So this is what you're going to build. You can see we have this USD coin. You can click and you can copy the address. Here we have the SIBA coin. You can click on that and you can simply disconnect. Here we are disconnected. Read to the browser, and here we have this notification. Click on this connect wallet, and here you have multiple options which you are providing to your user to connect with your DApp. So here we have MetaMask, Coinbase, Rainbow, Wallet Connect. If you click on this MetaMask, it will connect connection. Now disconnect. Here we have this. Click on this and you can connect to Coinbase wallet. Click on that. Because I don't have the extension in my browser, because of that it's opening the barcode. Here we have the Rainbow, we have the Wallet Connect. So if you have the extension in your browser, it's going to connect straight away, but if you don't have the extension, it's going to give you the barcode so you can scan it in your mobile device and you can connect with the application. So it looks pretty good. So this is how it's going to look. So let's click and connect with the MetaMask, and here we are fetching the balance from our contract, and this particular owner own these two token, SIBA and USD coin. So let me show you that how you're going to do the swap. So this is the first section. This is all the token we are listing in the marketplace. You can define as many token as you want. So you can see Tahar USD, I have 20 coins. Then we have BNB 20 coins. Then we have USD 20 coin and all the coins. So if I come here, you can see this is the address of the token. You can simply click and copy, and all of this token I have. So I have done the swap. I have bought some of the token from the marketplace. And if you come back to this token, here you will find all the transaction we have done in this particular contract, the swap. So the address, the from, to, and this is the input value and this is the output value, and the status is completed. So things are looking pretty good. And now let's do the swap. So first I want to swap the token from ETH to any ERC20 token. So I'll click on that. This is the ETH, and let's select the next token. So I want to swap with something else. So what I will do, I'll come here. So I'm going to pick the SIBA Inu. So click on that. So this is the swap I'm going to do. So I want to provide the ETH value. So I'll provide 0.01 and it's going to give me this 100 SIBA EU. So if I provide this, if I click on the swap, it's going to make the transactions, and here the MetaMask popped up. Click on the confirm transaction, and here we are doing and swapping the token from ETH to our SIBA EU. So just wait, the transaction will take a little bit because we are actually doing this transaction not on our local host, we are doing on the Polygon test network, and you can see the transaction completed. If you reload that, and you can find that we have simply swapped the token. So this is the one swap. Now we have to do the swap from USD to SIBA EU, means token to token. So I'll pick the SIBA EU as the first token, and the second token I want to swap with USD coin. So I'll want to swap something like, let's say 30, not 300, because I don't have that. So I want to swap this token. Click on the swap. So first is going to approve. So whenever you want to do the swap from token to token or token to USDC, token to Ether, you have to provide the allowance to the contract. So here we have to click on the increase allowance. So click on that. It's going to increase the allowance. Then you can make the transaction. So here we have to define the amount. So we are transferring 30. So click on this next and approve. So it's going to make the first transaction, and after that we can able to swap the token. So here the transaction completed, and here you can see we got the button for the swap. So click on this swap, and now we're going to swap the token from SIBA EU to USDC. Click on confirm, and here the transaction is taking place. Just wait, and you can see beautiful. The transaction completed, and we have successfully swapped the token from SIBA EU to USD. It's working absolutely fine. You can see you can do the ETH token, and you can do token to swap, and you can see the balance got increased. If you come back to the token here, you will find the transaction we have done. The last transaction from the USD coin to SIBA, and here we have the information. Absolutely wonderful. So you can able to see all the data is looking absolutely amazing. Now you can come back here. and you can find all the details. Now let me show you that how you can swap from token to ether. So what I will do, I'll come back here, I will take this, let's take this Uniswap, and I'm going to take this, the other token is going to be the ether. So click on that. I guess I don't have Uniswap token, so I have to change this to, let's say, C by U, because sometime what happened that if you have too many, like any ERC20 token, and you want to convert it into a native currency like ether, Mati, no matter in which network you have deploy your contract, you can do that. So I want to take that ether out of this contract and I want to swap it with the C by U. So let's come here. That's the two currency I have defined, the two token. Now here I have to define the input value. So I want to swap close to 50. I want to give 50 token as a C by U, and this much ether I will get as an output. If I come back in the MetaMask, you can see this is what we have right now exactly, but this number will go up when we'll do the swap. So this is what we have if I click on the swap. So first we have to increase the allowance, okay, because whenever you do any transaction with token with any other, then you have to increase the allowance and give the allowance to the contract. Click on this increase allowance and it's going to open the MetaMask, and here you have to provide the value. So make sure to provide the exact value, so 50 tokens, and simply confirm on the approve, and that's going to make the transaction successfully. So once the transaction will complete, you're going to have a button for the swap. So you can see the transaction went through, and here we have the button. Now we can click on the swap and it's going to make another transaction. Here we are doing exactly the actual swap. So just wait, it's going to take a little bit time and the transaction will complete, and it looks absolutely wonderful. So transaction is completed successfully. If you reload the browser, you can see we have given our C by U token and we have received ether. If you come back here in the MetaMask, you can see this went up. Looks pretty good. So that's absolutely wonderful, and you can able to find all the details about the transaction which you have done between the tokens and the input value and the output value. So that's wonderful. So it looks pretty good. Now what we can do, come back here and let's see the responsiveness of this application. So this 100% responsive. So this is how it's going to look on the mobile device. Nice card section we have, and we have information about the token. So if you click on this, it's going to open this model and you can pick the network. You can change the dimension, the ratio, and that's how it's going to look on the mobile device. So let's perform another swap. So this time we're going to swap the Tahar USDT to the, let's say, this particular coin. So I guess I have this token. Yes, I do have this token. So let's change this to, let's say, ether, okay? And this time I want to swap, I want to get one token. So let's remove this, and I want to get one USDC. So this is the value. If I click on this swap, it's going to open the MetaMask. Click on that and I have to simply confirm the transaction, and this time it's going to make only one transaction because we are not increasing the allowance, because we are transacting from ETH with the token, so we don't need to provide the allowance in that. So just wait, the transaction is taking place, and here the transaction completed and we got this notification which is 100% responsive. If you reload the browser, come back here, and here you will find that this is the one token we have got. Looks pretty good. You can see that we have to reload the browser. You can change this behavior. You can add the reload function when the transaction will complete. Again, that I'm going to cover in the project. You can click and you can copy the address, and you can come here in the polyscan and you can check the transactions are taking place. So right now, this is the token. If you click on that, you will find all the token supply, the 3 address holders, and right now we have done 5 transactions, and just now we have done this one transaction. You can see this is the transaction we have done for one quantity, and if you come back in the transaction hash, you will find all the information. So this is the from to, and here we have done the transfer of the USD token and the amount. So it looks absolutely incredible. So come back here. So this is what you're going to build. You can see every single thing is looking absolutely fine. Now, if you want to get the starter file and the final code, you can come back to the blockchain coder. Come to the blockchain coder, and here you will find all the resources which you need to build this project. So click on here, and if you haven't created your account, make sure to create your account. And I have recently launched a course, so click here and you will find that what you're exactly going to build. This is one of the projects which you can include in your portfolio. You will master all the latest technology which you can check from your end. We got so much love in this project, so much support, so come here and check this out. Now come back here and get the startup file. So click on this source code, and you can simply search the name of the project, Uniswap, And we generally have this 3 project, so you can simply do the filtration from here as well. So go with the old one, let's go with the recent one, and this is the one which we're going to build, and you will get the startup file. Click here and you will come here in the GitHub repository, simply copy the URL, and we're going to simply clone this entire startup file. So simply copy this one and come back to your desktop and create a new folder. I'll call it Uniswap Marketplace, and open this particular folder in your VS Code. So I'm going to select the folder, I'm going to my desktop, click on this particular one and open, make on the big screen, and now we have to clone the repository. So simply close this one, open up your terminal, and we have to type this particular command. So there is a lot of commands available in Git, but we go with this one, git clone, give the URL of the repository, and you have to give this dot. So it's going to it's going to clone the entire repository in the same directory. It's not going to create a separate folder. So hit enter. This will happen very quickly. You can see how quickly we have installed the entire starter file. So we are done with this. Clear the terminal. We can simply close this one, and now let me give you a quick walkthrough that what you will get exactly in the starter file and how we have to do the setup. So come back here. First thing you have to do is you have to simply delete this git file because we don't need that. Now you will get this components folder. In that you will find all the components we have breakdown in our applications, and you will get the CSV icon as well. So this is the CSV folder. In that you will find all the icons we are using. So this is the Facebook, Insta, and we have the logo, menu, Twitter, all the icons you will find. So close this one, and here you will find all the components which we going to build together. So we have the card component, we have the footer component, we have the header component, we have the HeroSection, and this is the index. In this we're going to import all the components. Then we have the selector, then we have the SingleCard, swap component, swap field, table, token balance, transaction status. So all of this component we're going to build. Then come back to the deploy. In that we're going to write the entire smart contract. So this is the separate folder because I try to keep things separate, one for the contract and one for the front end part. So in this deploy you will find this contract folder, and we have this called custom exchange, and this is the contract we're going to build. We're going to build a script, and here you will find the get ignore. Then this is the Hardhat configuration. So I have already done the configuration for the Polygon, but you can literally deploy to any network, Ethereum, Gorilla, Sofali, any network you can deploy. All you have to do is to paste the RPC URL of that particular network. I'll explain everything. So this is the configuration which is already done. All you have to do is to get the wallet, like private key of your wallet, and you can deploy. If I open the package.json file, we are using 4 important packages. We are using this Nomic Foundation, Hardhat, and OpenZeppelin contract. So make sure to install, don't need to do any changes. Here, this is the version I'm using, close that one. Then come back to the pages. We're going to build 2 pages. So this is the main, the starting point of our application. We're going to do a lot of changes, a lot of configuration here for the wallet, for the network, for the theme, for the chain IDs, tons of configuration. We're going to do it. Then we have the index, the home page, and here we have the token, the transaction detail page, history page. So that's the pages we have. Come back to the public, and you have given this all the images we are using. You can literally put your images of your choice, but I'm going to go with this. And here we have all of this. So now we have to come back to the style folder. In that we have these 2 files. One is global CSS, and the second one we have is the home module CSS. We're going to do the configuration together. We're going to write all the CSS. This is the home modules. We're going to do it together. Now come back to the utils, and we're going to follow 3 different strategies. So first we're going to make the functionality to write the document, read the document, and we're going to separate the entire functions and the data of our application. So we have this couple of folders. This is the contract, this is the context, and we have the sell token and the utility function. And you have this ABI which I was testing. I deployed the contract, so you can literally keep it or you can delete it, because if you make any changes in the contract then you have to delete this one. So it's better to delete this one, because later we're going to simply bring it here, the ABI. Close this one, looks fine. So we have all of these 4 files. Now come back to the git ignore, come back here in Next.js config file. Don't need to do any changes, let it be like that. And if you come back to the package.json file, and here we are using most important packages, and you have to get yourself familiar with these packages, because whatever packages we are utilizing in this project, which is really powerful and you can include in any project, and you don't need to write a lot of code for having the basic functionality. So this is the script we have, dev We have build, we have start, we have lint. So you can start the application with this 4 script. Then we have the dependency. So first dependency we have is lead. Let's react. You will see what it's going to do. It's going to save a lot of time. Then we have the next one is called hero icon, and we're going to use the hero icon because we are using icons in our project for clipboard and all of the things. Then we have this particular package. Then we have this. Then we have the Rambo kit, which allow us to configure the networks, get the default network configuration. Then we have the div. Then we have this package. Then we have the Ether, Next.js, React DOM, React Hot Toaster. So this one is really good, and this one is amazing because this will allow you to connect with multiple wallets, and you can do the configuration, and it will make a lot of sense. So I'll show you. Then we have this dev dependency because we are using Tailwind CSS. So these are the version I'm using. Make sure to use the exact version, no matter when you are watching this project. You are watching after 5 years or 3 years, or no matter what date it is. If you use the exact version, your application is going to be working absolutely fine. If you use any different version, it's not going to work. So make sure to use exactly the same version. Close this one. And this is the already configuration I have done for the post CSS. Don't need to do any changes. And here we have the Tailwind CSS configuration. So if you want to create multiple component, multiple architecture, that's all you can define. But we have these two structure in our application. We have pages and we have the component folder. Make sure to give the exact name which you have given to your folder. If you not give the exact name, it's not going to work. So like this one is components. And if I make it capital C, the Tailwind CSS will not work. So make it to give the exact name. If it's lower, give the lower. If it's capital, give the capital, and save it. Pretty good. So this is the Tailwind configuration. Now what we have to do is we have to install the packages of our smart contract. So open up your terminal, and right now we are in the main directory. So first we have to go into this deploy folder. So we have to type cd deploy, and here we are in the deploy folder, and now we have to deploy the packages. Type npm I, and it's going to install the packages, the 3 packages: node module, Hardhat, nomic foundation. So just wait, this will take a little bit time. And finally we have installed the packages. Close this one. Now we have to get out of this folder. Now we have to come out of this folder, and we have to go to the main directory, and we have to install the other packages. So close this one, and now we have to install all of this. So we have to say npm I and hit enter. This might take a little bit time. Sometime it will happen fast, sometime it will take a little bit time depending on your internet speed, because we have a lot of packages to install. So just wait and clear your terminal. And if you get any error by chance, because right now I'm not having any issue, if you get any error by chance, try to install the packages one by one. Okay, simply copy and put in the readme file and install one by one, and that will work fine, and you will be able to know that what is the problem you are having in which package. So that looks pretty fine to me, no issue we have. Now we have to simply type npm run dev, because we have to start the application to see everything is working or not, and everything is working fine. Come back to the browser, click on this localhost, and boom, here you can see we have this app.js which is working. If I come back to the pages, close this one. If I come back to the pages, here we have this app.js, and here we have to do a lot of configuration because this is the triggering point of our application. So all the setups for the network, that's all we're going to do it here. So we have to do a lot of work. So close this one, and things are fine. We have all of these components. Now what we have to do is we have to simply import all of this component, including the icons, here in the index.js file, and we're going to simply export it from here. So we can simply call wherever we want in our application, in wherever we like, in whatever page we want to call it. So let's import the component. So all of this component we have to import, including the icons. So come back here. We'll say import header, that's coming from same directory. Then we have to import footer, import card, import HeroSection, import selector, import SingleCard, import swap component, import table, import token balance, and the last one is transaction status. So this is the components we have imported, and now we have to import the icons that's coming from the CSV file. So let me give this command CSV icon, menu, and that's coming from CSV menu. Then we have the logo, then we have the Facebook, then we have Insta, and the last one is Twitter. So we have imported all of this component including the icons, and now we have to simply export from this particular file. So we'll say export. Let's export header, footer, card, HeroSection, selector, SingleCard, swap component, table, token balance, transaction status. Then we have the CSV icon called menu, logo, Twitter, Facebook, and the last one is Insta. So finally we have imported and exported all the components. So far things are looking pretty clean, and this is the best architecture you can follow whatever application you're building, no matter how big it is. So we have all of this, and we have to write all of this together. So far things are pretty good to me, no issue we have. Close this one, and here we have the utils. This is also look good. So we are done with this entire setup, no issue we are having, everything looks pretty good. And so we are done with the setup. Now let me tell you the architecture which I'm going to follow in this particular project. First we're going to write the smart contract, then we're going to deploy the smart contract. Once we deploy, after that we're going to work on our context management. We'll build exactly the important logic for communicating with the smart contract interaction, and after that we're going to work on the front end part and make everything work. So this is the architecture I'm going to follow. First we'll build the contract, second we'll build the functionality, and third we're going to work on the UI part. So let's start writing the smart contract. So open up your deploy and let's start writing. So first we have to provide the license identifier, SPDX license identifier, GPL 3.0. There is a multiple version, you can pick whatever you want, but this is the version I'm using. Now we have to give the pragma solidity, and this is the particular version 8.0. We have to import the Open Zeppelin contract. So we'll say import Open Zeppelin contract, ERC20 token, ERC20 token soul contract. Now we can come back, we'll create a contract called custom token, and we're going to inherit the Open Zeppelin contract. And all we have to do is to pass the name and the supply. So let's take this constructor, in that we're going to pass the name and the symbol of our token. We'll call it ERC20. We'll give name and symbol. In that we have this particular function called mint, and all we have to do is to provide the owner, message.sender, and the supply of the token. So we are going with the 18 decimal. You can take it 16, 14, it's totally up to you. But we want to make it as a EVM compatible on Ethereum blockchain Polygon. So we are going with the 18 decimal. So that's the simple contract we have. So this particular contract, what it will do, it will allow us to create our ERC20 token. So we're going to have multiple token in our platform, and we're going to utilize this contract to create that. So this is the first piece of contract. Now we have to work on our marketplace contract. So it's going to have a two contract. You can create into a separate file, but I will go with this approach. Now I'm going to come here. We'll take a contract called custom decentralized exchange. DX stand for short. Now here we have to define a couple of variables. So we'll say custom token to be initialized. First thing, we have to take this array public tokens. In that we're going to keep all the token names. So this is the name which I'm defining to the token. So we'll say Terra, USDC, BNB, USDC coin, Ether, Torn, Mati token, Shiba Inu, Uniswap. So these are the token I'm creating. You can call it whatever you want. It's totally up to you, because this is going to be the name of our token. So that's the name. Now we can come back here. Let's create a mapping. Mainnet instance. Let's create a mapping called string. It will use this ERC20, and we're going to simply pass our public inheritance. So that's how we can create the mapping with each one of this token. Now we can come back here. Let's take a variable called ether value. So this is the default value, we're going to utilize it. Come here. We'll take a struct, and in that we're going to keep the history of the transaction, because whenever the transaction will take place, we have to keep the history and the information so we can fetch and we can display in our front end. So let's call this one unt history id string token A, and we have the token B. then we have the unt, the input value, and we have to get the unt is output value. Then we have the address of the user, and that's the our struct for the history of the transaction. Now come back here, we'll take a unt variable called public, called history index, so every single transaction will have a unique id. Then we have to call this mapping, and we have to simply map the individual transaction with the id. So that's the mapping we have. Then we can come back here, let's create a constructor. In that we have to define this for loop, because when we deploy the contract, it's going to trigger our token contract and it's going to create the token we wanted to list in the marketplace. So we're going to take this for loop, we'll say I is equal to 0, then we have the length, and that's very easy for loop we're going to create. So we'll call this custom token, and that we have to pass this new custom token, and we have to pass the token name and token symbol. So these are the two things we are passing. I'm giving exactly the same name as a symbol or as a name. So that's the data we are passing in a custom token. Now we can come back here, we'll take a token instance, and we have to simply map with the token, and that's our for loop function. So what we are doing here, we are creating a for loop, we are getting the length of the number of token we want to create, then we are creating the instant of the contract of our token contract, and then we are passing this particular two information, because if you want to create token, we have to pass this two information like symbol and the name. So we are giving exactly the same name, and then we are simply initializing that. Pretty good. Now come back here, close this constructor. Now we can come back here, let's take a function called get balance, and this will allow us to get the balance of the user. So we'll pass this string, memory, token name, and address of the user. It's going to be public, so anybody can call it. View return, it's going to return the unt variable, so we can fetch the balance and we can display in the front end. Now let's come and return the balance. So we'll call this instant map, in that we have to pass the token name, and we'll call it the balance of function, and we'll pass the address. So we'll have the balance of the user in that particular token. Now simply close this function. Now we can come back, create another function called get total supply, and we'll say memory token public return. It's going to return the unt variable. We'll call it return token instant map, in that we have to pass the token name, and we'll call this total supply function, which is coming from OpenZeppelin, so it will give us the total supply of the token. Close that one. That's the second function we have. Now let's create the third function. We'll call it get name, and this will allow us to get the name of the token. So we'll pass the string, memory, and token name. It's going to be public view return string. It's going to return the string, means a name. Then we can come back here, we'll call this return token instant map, we'll pass the name, and we'll call this name function, so it will give us the name. We have a lot of function in our ERC20 token as per the Ethereum standard, you can check that. So I'm simply calling all of the function which is we have on the instant. When we'll use the OpenZeppelin contract, it's give all the functions. So close this function. Now we can come back here, we'll take a function and we'll call it get token address, and that's pretty simple. All we have to do is to pass the token name. It will be public view return, and it will return the address of the token, because remember that this particular address is going to be internally there in the contract. We have to get it because we have multiple token, and the more token you will have inside an array, the more addresses you will have of each one of this token. So we'll say address. We're going to use the same method. We'll say return address token instant, and we have to simply pass the name, so that will give us the name of the token. Pretty good. Now simply close this particular function. Come here, we'll create a function and we'll call it get ether balance, and that's a very simple function where you return, and it's going to return the unt variable. Now we can come back here, we'll take a return and we'll say address this dot balance, and it will return the balance of the user. So that's the function. Now we can create another function. Let's call this one transaction history, and this will return the entire transaction we are doing. So we can fetch and we can display. So we have to pass let's say token name, and we have to pass the ether token. Then we have to pass the input value, and we have to pass the output value, because when the transaction will complete, means when the user will swap the token from ether to any custom token or custom token to custom token, we have to call this function and we have to store the information about the transaction in the contract, so we can fetch and we can display in the transaction history. So it's going to be an internal function, in that we have to simply call this index, and here we have to call this history index, and we have to increment, and it will generate a new ID for every single transaction. So we'll say plus plus, then we can come here, let's take a unt variable called history ID, and we have to simply update it to history index. Then we can take that, call it history storage, and we have to simply update the entire information in our struct. So we'll say history, we'll pass that history ID. So that's how we can make the relation between every single transaction with a unique ID. So first we are incrementing this particular history ID, then we are storing as a variable, and then we are creating a storage, and we are assigning that particular ID in this particular mapping, so we can easily able to identify the information based on the ID. So that's the very simple logic we have used. Once we have this, now we can simply update the information. So we'll say history dot history ID and update that to history ID. Then we have to update the history ID to user address. We'll call it message.sender, means the one who's calling this function. Then we have to update the information about the token A, and we'll call the token name. Then we have to take the token B, and here we have to call this ether token. Then we have to take this input value, and we can simply pass that one input value, and we have to pass the output value as well, and we already have that information into this function. So we are updating all of this information. Now simply close this function. So what this function will do, it will allow us to update the information in our struct whenever any swap will happen, and we are storing that information in the contract. Pretty good. Now we can come back here. Let's create a function. We'll call it swap ETH to token. So now we have to work on the function which allow the user to swap the token from ETH, means the native token, the native currency of the blockchain, with the any ERC20 token. So that's the function we are building. In that we have to receive a couple of information. So we'll say this memory token name, and we'll say public payable return, and we have to return the unt variable. You might be wondering that why we are taking only the token name, because we are using ether, the native currency of the blockchain, to swap the token. So we don't need to take the two information. We can only good with this one information, the token name. Now come back here and let's build the logic. So we have this particular unt variable. We'll call this input value, which we are getting from this message.sender. Once we have the input value, after that we have to take this output value, and that's what we will get from here, input value divided by the ETH value, and we have to simply multiply by the 10 and 18 decimal point. So that's how we can make the equivalent to the token. Okay, so this, and that's the very simple calculation. What we are saying here, we are taking the input value, we are dividing with the ETH value, and then we are simply multiplying with 10 and 18, so we can have an equivalent to the 18 decimal point, and the transaction can easily happen and the user can swap the token. So that's the simple formula we have whenever you want to do the custom transaction between ether to any custom token. Now we have the output value, so we'll say convert it to 18 decimal point. I'll give this comment so you guys can take the reference. Now we have the value and we have the output value, so we already have these two information. Now we can come back here, we'll take this required statement, and we have to do the check. So here we have to do the check is like token instant map, because we already have the instant of the token, and that we have to simply pass the name of the token, and we have to call this transfer function, and that we have to simply pass this message.sender, because there we are doing the transfer, and we have to pass the output value. Pretty simple. Now we can come back here. Let's take a string and memory, call this ether token, and we call this ether. We can come back here, we'll take this transaction history function we already built, and we have to simply pass the information. So we'll pass the token name, we'll pass the ETH token, we'll pass the input value, we'll pass the output value, and that's the information we are passing into this function, which will store the information in our struct. Now we can simply come here, we'll take this return output value, and that's the only thing we are doing into this function. So let me repeat what we are doing here. First, we are taking the name of the token, and this particular function allows us to swap between native currency to any ERC20 token. We are checking for the value, then we are following this particular formula which allow us to convert the custom token into a 18 decimal point so we can make the transaction possible, and that's the conversion value you can see here. When we do any transaction on the blockchain, it's happened in terms of weight, so that's what we are doing here. Then we are doing the transfer of the token to the message.sender, and that's the value we have assigned. Here we have given the native currency name, means ether, and that's what the information we have to pass. If the user is doing token to token, then we have to give the name of the token, not the ether. So this is the function we have. Hope so far things are clear. Let's move ahead. Now we can come back here. Let's create another function called swap token to ETH. So first function was ETH to token. Now this one is token to ETH, because sometimes what happened that if you have bought too many ETH, if you have bought too many tokens and you want to convert those tokens into your ether, you can do that. So let's call this string, and that we have to pass the name of the token and we have to pass the amount which you want to transfer. It's going to be a public return, and at the end it's going to return the UNT variable, because that's what we want to return into this function. Once we're done with that, now we can simply come back here. Let's call this one, let's convert that. We'll say convert the token amount ether value to accepted out. So convert the token amount ETH value to accept output 10. So that's the conversion we're going to do now. So we'll take this UNT variable and we'll say exact amount. We'll take this amount and we're going to simply divide by 10, multiply by 18, because we have to convert into a decimals. Once we have the exact amount, after that we're going to take this ETH to be transferred. So the amount we want transferred to the user. So we have this expected amount. We have to simply multiply with the ETH value, and this is the variable we have taken on the top. So that's the value we have. Now come back here, we'll take this required statement and we have to do the check. Like take this required statement, we'll say address this dot balance, and we have to make the check that if it's greater or equal to the actual amount the ether user wants to transfer. If it's that, then we'll say decentralized is running low balance. So that's the check we are doing. We are checking for the balance. If it's less or equal to the transfer amount, then we have to throw this error message. Once we're done with the check, now we can come back here. We'll take this payable and we can call this message.sender and transfer function, and then we have to pass the transfer amount and we have to do the check. So we'll call this like token instant map, and we'll pass the token name and call the transfer function message.address and the address this amount. Pretty good. Now simply come back here, we'll take this string and we have to simply update this information into our contract. So we'll take this string memory ether token, call this ether. Now we have to take the struct, we'll say transaction history, we'll pass the token name and we'll pass the token ether token, and we have to pass the two token name, and we have to pass the exact amount and to be transfer amount. Once we pass, it will update the entire information in our contract. Now we have to do the return, so we have to return the entire transfer amount at the end of this function and simply close this function. So what we are doing here, let me repeat what we are doing here. First we are converting the amount, then we are checking for the transfer amount and multiplying with the ETH value. Then we are doing the check for the fund that the balance is available or not. If it's not, then we have to throw the error message. Then we are transferring the fund, then we are making the transaction of the token. Then we have taken this string variable because our transaction history function need this information, like the two token name, amount and transfer amounts, and at the end we are returning. So that's a very simple function. So we are done with this. Now let's move ahead. Now let's create another function called swap token to token, and this one is going to be quite interesting because what we have learned so far that we have transfer and swap the token from token to ETH or ETH to token. Now we are allowing the swap between token to token, and I want to keep the value of the token constant. Like if I swap one ether, like one ERC20 token, so the other token will have the exact value. So that's the approach I'm taking. I'm not just playing with the pricing. You can make it complex, but we want to go with a simple approach. So it's a single string. We'll say memory, we'll say search, token name, and we'll have the second token name, destinations. So this one is the first one. Then we have the destination token, and we'll take the UNT variable called the amount. So these are the three information we need: the two token name, and we have the amount. It's gonna be a public. And let's come back here. So come back, take this required statement, and we'll say this token instead map. In that we have to pass the first token, like the starting token. We'll call this transfer message dot sender, and we'll give the address, this, and the amount. That's what we have to do first. First we have to get the token, we have to call the transfer function, and we have to pass the two information which we need: message dot sender and the address and the amount. So that's the transfer we do. Once we're done with that, we have to do the second check. We'll say token instant map. We'll take the destination token, and we have to do exactly the same thing. We call this transfer from. This time we'll say message dot sender to the amount, because that's the thing we had transferring. Once we're done with this two check, now we can come back here. We have to call this transaction history, and we have to pass the information. So we'll pass the token from. This is the destination token, and the amount, the two information we have to pass. And we have to simply close this function. So this one is pretty simple, because we have already defined the token value to be constant, equal, when it's come to swapping the token between token to token. So first we are transferring the token from the message.sender to the address, and the destination token which the user wants to swap the token, we are transferring that function to his address. So that's the simple function here. Now let's move ahead and let's work on the next function. So let's call this function get all history, and this will allow us to get all the transaction which user have done in our decentralized exchange, which we can fetch and display in our front end. So let's call this get all history. We'll say public view return, and it's going to return the entire history struct memory. So first we have to take this UNT 256. We'll say item count, and we already have this history index which will keep the track of that how many transactions have taken place, because every single transaction will increase this particular ID. Once we have that item count, then we have to get this current index, and I set it to 0. Then we can come back. We'll take this history, an array. We'll say memory items, and we have to create a new array. So we'll take this new history, and we have to provide the length, because in Solidity it's very important that you have to provide the length of the array which you want to return. So we'll say item count, and because of that this information is available in this, because every time a transaction will come, a transaction will take place, it's going to be increased. So we can easily able to identify the length of this particular transaction. So once we have that one, now all we have to do is we have to run this for loop. We'll say UNT 256 if I is equal to 0, and we have to simply run the loop. So we'll say item counter and I plus plus. So this will create the loop, and then we have to simply take this UNT variable. We'll say current ID I plus 1. We can take this history storage current item, and we have to simply say history, and we have to pass the ID in the current item, so it will have a unique ID. Once we're done with that, now we can simply come back here. We can take this item current index equal to current item. Now we can come back here. We'll take this current index. It will be increase every time this loop run by 1, and it's going to keep the information right up here in the current index. So initial value is 0. Whenever a successful for loop will execute, it's going to increment this one. Pretty good. Now we can come back here, and let's take this return, and we have to return the entire item, and that's what we have. So that's the very simple function. I believe that you guys have seen this function a lot of time. All it does that it will give you the entire information from a mapping, and you have defined as a struct. It will return the entire information. So that's what we have. So that's all get all user function. So with that, we are done with this entire smart contract. We have seen that we have so many functions, and things are looking pretty fine. So like first we have created the custom token contract, then we have created our custom decentralized exchange. So with that, we are done with this. Simply close this one, come back here, and we are done with this one. Close this one, and now we have to write the script because we have to deploy the contract and we have to get the address of the contract and the ABI. So come back here in the script and let's write it down. So first we're going to take a variable called ref, and we are getting this particular data from the Hardhat. So we'll say Hardhat, and then we can come back here. We'll build the async function. We'll say function main. In that we have to first give the name of the variable because we're going to make the connection with our contract. So we have a method which we can use called say await ref dot ether. We'll say get contract. In that we have to pass the contract name. So whatever name you have given to your contract, make sure to pass the exact name because we are using this get contract factory. So I'll call this custom decentralized dex. So we got our contract here. Now once we have that one, now we can build this custom dex, and we have all these methods right available here. So we'll take this await custom dex. On that we have to call this deploy, and this will deploy our contract. Now we can come back here. We'll take this await custom deployed, and at the end we have to simply console log out the address of the token, the contract, and that's the only thing we have to do here. So what we are doing here, first we are using this particular method which is available on the Hardhat ether package called get contract factory. You can use it. This particular method is available on ether package itself if you don't want to use this Hardhat package, but I would recommend you to go with the package because that's what we are using, and it gives us a bunch of method. You can simply console log out, and you can see on that we are calling this particular deploy method, and we are calling this deployed, and then we are simply consolely logging the address. Now we have to simply call this particular function. So we'll call this main. We have to catch if anything goes wrong. So I'll say console.error. We'll take this error object, and now we have to stop the application from running after the transaction is completed. So we'll say process.exit code 1, and again this is everything is there in the documentation of Hardhat when you deploy the contract, so you can check and you can find all the value which is available and what it does. But I'm going to go with the simple approach. So this is our deploy script which allows us to deploy our contract. So far things are looking pretty good. I hope you guys have understood that what we are doing here. So it looks pretty fine to me. No issue we have. We are getting the contract, then we are simply deploying the console. Now come back here, and we are done with the contract. We are done with the script. Now it's time to deploy our contract. So close this one, come back here in the Hardhat config file. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of testing the contract locally, we're going to deploy the contract to the Polygon. And that way we don't need to run the node over and over again. And if we deploy the contract once, it will be there and we can call it anytime we want. So for that we have to do the configuration in our Hardhat config file. So come back here, and this is the already configuration which is provided to you in the starter file. So all we have to do is to provide the private key of our wallet. So close this one, and everything is done here. Don't need to do any changes. All you have to do is to get your private key and make sure you have some fund in that private key. So this is the entire setup I have already done in the starter file, so you can get it from there and just leave it as it is. All you have to do is to get your private key and paste here. So I'll come back in the browser and I'll try to get it. So this looks fine, no issue we have, and come back here. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, do so. That will support me a lot. I'll open my MetaMask. Let me give my password. Click on unlock, and here I'm on the account 6. I'll close that one, and you can see that I'm already connected to the Polygon. I'll go back to the account 1, and you can see I already have a fund. So if you have a fund, you can easily able to copy the address and you can make the transaction. But if you don't have fund, you can simply open a new type Acmeli Faucet, and there you will have a lot of options. Select for the Mumbai, and you will get a couple of free MATI which you can use to test a contract. So I already have, so I'll click here and I will go into the account details, and here I have to provide the password. So we'll click on this show private key, and here I have to pass my password, and I have to hold, and it will open, and I can simply copy my private key. So it's my test account, so I can show you, but I would encourage you not to use my private key. So that's the address I have to paste here. Paste, and I got my private key of my wallet. And now I'm ready to deploy the contract. So looks pretty fine, no issue we have here. So close this one. We're done with the entire setup. First, we have written the smart contract. Second, we have written the deploy script. And third, we have done the setup for our deployment of the contract on Polygon. And now is the time to deploy that. So simply, let's bring it here and open up your terminal. And this is the exact script you have to type. So first, we have to get into the deploy folder because we are in the main directory. We'll say cd deploy. Now we have to simply paste this particular command, npx hardhat run script deploy. So the deploy script is inside the script folder, and we are calling this network, and here we are defining the network name. So this network name could be anything. If you want to deploy on the mainnet, testnet, Polygon, Solana, wherever you want to deploy, simply call this method. And all you have to do is to hit enter. So make sure to give the exact command and hit enter. This transaction will take a little bit time. You can see our contract is compiled successfully. Now it's going to return out the address. So just wait. It's taking a little bit time because we are doing on the test network. And finally, we got the address of our contract. So simply copy this one and come back here in the README file. And here I just keep it for a time being. Simply here is the couple of important links which you can simply check from your end. And I'm going to paste that. So this is the contract address. So we are done with the 3 steps, and if you come back here, so the moment you will compile your contract successfully, it's going to generate the API that what we're going to use it to make the connection and communicate with our contract. So here it will generate the artifact. Inside the artifact you will have this contract. Inside the contract you will have this API, custom dest API, and we need the custom token API. So these and this we need these two. So simply do one thing. I close this one, and this looks fine. Close this one and simply bring those API in the utils folder. So I simply brought them here. So you can see I've simply drag and drop the APIs. So we have the API for the custom token, we have the API for the custom decentralized exchange. So simply close that one. Looks pretty fine. Now what we have to do is we have to work on the utility function. So you can see here we have 4 files. We have the utils, we have the sales token, we have the contract, and we have the context. So that's the thing we're going to work next. So come back here, like we have all of these files, and let's come back to the utils. Click on that. In this utils files, what we're going to do is we're going to build some regular function which we're going to use in our application, like conversion function from Wei to Ether or Ether to Wei. So let's import the Ether package. Now we can come back here. Let's create a very first function. So we'll say export function to Wei. This function will allow us to convert it to Wei. In that we have to pass the amount and decimal points. So it's going to be an 18. Now we can take this variable called to Wei. We already have the package, and we can simply pass the amount and the decimal points. And at the end we have to return the to Wei, and we have to convert it into a string because that's the suitable form of passing the data, and it's going to trigger and it will display in the front end, or it will be add in the function. So this is the to-Wei function. Now the second function is going to be, let's say, to ETH. The same thing we have to do here. So we'll say to ETH ether dot utils parse format. So this time we call format unit, because if you want to convert it to like ether, we have to have this particular function on utils format unit. In that we have to pass the amount and the decimal, and at the end we have to simply return the amount. And that's the only thing we have to do here in the utils file. So we have this 2 function. First function allow us to convert the amount into Wei. The second function allow us to convert the amount into ether. So the one function will use internally into a function, and the second function will use external for displaying the value in the front end. So we have this 2 function. Now we are done with this. Hope things are pretty clear to all of you guys, and you guys understand that what we have done in this function. Now what we have to do is we are done with this. Come back here, and now we have to work on the next one, TokenSale. So this one is very important. So before we write some code, let me show you what I want to create here. So come back in the deploy and come back to the contract. Inside this we have this contract, and here you can see that here we have defined all of this contract which we have in our decentralized exchange, which we're going to allow user to swap. And that's what we have to define in that particular file. the token cell, because that's the data we're going to display in the front end. So it's always better to keep the information separate. So come back here, let's export the name of the token. So let's call export const eth, call export const coin1, we'll say Tara USDC, and let's do the same thing for all the coins. So this will be coin2 BNB, this is coin3 USD coin, coin4 set eth, and we have coin5 call ton, and we have coin6 meti, then we have coin7 Shiba Inu, and we have the coin8 which is the Uniswap, and we have coin, and we have default value to be select a token. So these are the options we're going to provide to the user in the front end in the pop-up module so they can select. That's very simple. And the best part is that this is how you have to break down your application whenever you are working on any decentralized application. So this is the way you have to do it. And if you really want to master complete blockchain development or blockchain DApp development, then you have to check this particular course which I have launched. And that we have built multimedia NFT marketplace where you are providing a lot of feature to your users. They can create NFT, they can sell NFT, they can put the NFT for an auctions, they can bid, they can chat, they can make friends, they can transfer the fund, they can give the support messages, they can simply give the feedback. A lot of feature we have included. So make sure to check this particular video. In that I have explained everything, and check this particular module, that what you will learn in this particular project in this course. With that said, let's come back here. This is all what we have here. Looks pretty fine, no issue we have. So we have all of these coins which we are providing. Make sure to give the exact name which you have given in your contract. So come back here, we are done with this particular file as well. Now we have to work on the contract, and we have to build the function so we can communicate with the two contract function we have. So click here, let's import the ether package that's coming from ether. Then we have to import the APIs for both the contract. So we'll say custom decentralized API, and we already have this in Utils. So first, now we have to get the token APIs, and we already have it in the Utils token custom token. So we got the API, we got the ether package. Now we can come back, let's build a function, call it token contract. So this one is going to be a very simple function. All we have to do is to call this, pass the address of the user who is interacting with the contract. We'll say provider, and we'll say new ether.provider web3 provider, and we have to pass the window.ethereum, because if you have any web3 wallet, it will inject Ethereum object in your browser, and that's what we are getting because we have installed MetaMask in our browser. So MetaMask automatically inject the Ethereum object. So once we have that provider, then we have to simply get this Ethereum window. Then we'll check if Ethereum is there, then we have to get the signer, which is coming from provider.getSigner. And here we have to take a variable called contract render, and we have this particular method on ether package, new ether contract. In that we have to pass the address, we have to pass the custom token API, and we have to pass the signer. So these are the information we are passing into this particular function, and this will allow us to get the object of the contract. And simply close this one. Now at the end we have to return the contract render, and that way we will have the contract object, and we can simply call the function in our front end. So that's the token one. Now we have to build another function which allow us to communicate with the decentralized contract. So we'll call it contract. It's going to be an async. It will take this provider, and that's coming from the same place, window. Then we have to check for the Ethereum, which is there in the window. Now we can come, we have to check for the Ethereum. If we have the Ethereum, then we have to simply get the signer, and we have to simply get the contract render, and the same method we have to call new ethers contract. In that we have to pass the address of the contract. So this is the address of the decentralized contract we have, and that's what I'm passing. Make sure to pass the exact address. and we have to pass the ABI, and we have to pass the signer. So this is the one we're going to pass, because this time we're going to, most of the interaction will happen in our decentralized contract. So that's why we have to pass the address of the contract here. And at the end, we have to simply return the contract render. And that's the only thing we have to do here. So we have these two important functions. First function, which allow us to communicate with our token, and the second function which allow us to interact with our decentralized contract. So we are done with these two functions. Now simply come back here, and here you can see here we have this two ABI, and that's what we are interacting. Pretty good, no issue we have so far. Things are looking pretty good to me. And close this one, and here we have the second one. Make sure to provide the exact address of the contract which we have deployed. Now come back here. So looks pretty fine to me. Close this one, and we are done. Come back here, and now we have to work on the next and the last file here in the utils, the context. So let's start working on it. So first we have to import the big number and ether that's coming from the ether package. Then we have to import the contract and token contract which we have already built, and that's coming from the contract file. Then we have to import the functions, the utility function we have created to ether, and that's coming from utils. Then we can build a function, and we can call it something like swap to token. This is the front end function we are building, swap ETH to token, and that's the function we have in our contract. I'm giving the exact name so we don't have any confusion. So this particular function will take the information. It will take the token name, amount, then we'll take the try and catch block, because if anything goes wrong we have to catch that. Then we'll take this transaction, we'll take the value, and we'll call the method and pass the amount it's going to return in ETH. Then we can take a variable called contract object, and we already have the function contract. It will give the entire contract object. Now we can call this data await contract object on, and we're going to simply call this particular function we have on in the contract, swap ETH to token, and we'll pass the token name and the amount. We'll say contract receipt await data dot wait, and we have to return the receipt of the transaction. And if anything goes wrong we have to simply catch that. So we'll return the parse error message, it's called E, and it will give us the error of the name. So that's the very first function we have which allow us to swap from ETH to token. We're done with that. Now we can build the next function. Let's call this one has valid allowance, because what happened when the user will do the swap of the token from token, we have to check for the allowance. So first he or she will allow the contract to spend the token on behalf of him, allowance. So we have to check for the allowance, whether the allowance is there or not. So in that we have to pass the owner and the token name and the amount. These are the three information you need to validate the allowance. It's going to be a quite similar one. So first we have to get the contract object, then we have to take the address, and which we have to get from the get token contract address, and that we have to pass the name. So we have this function in our contract. If you pass the token name, it will give you the address of that particular token. So we are getting the address of the token. Now we'll take this token contract object, and we already have this token contract object. In that we have to pass the address, and from there we have to get the data. So we'll say await token contract, and we'll call this allowance function which is available. In that we have to simply pass the owner. We have to pass the, because this is the one who's going to check the ownership, the allowance. So these are the two information we have to pass to check the allowance, whether the decentralized contract have allowance to spend the token on behalf of the user or not. So that's the simple thing we have built here. So once we're done with that, we have to check the result. We'll say big number from, we have to simply convert it to a string, and we'll call this get. In that we have to simply pass this big number, and we have to pass the converted amount. Once we have the result, then we have to simply return the result at the end, and we have to catch an error if anything goes wrong. Parse error message, and that looks fine. Hope so far things are clear to all of you guys that what we have done here. We have built the simple function which allows us to validate the allowance. Now let's work on the next function. Let's call this swap token to ETH. In that we have to pass the token name and the amount. We'll take this try and catch. We'll say we have to get the contract object, and once we have the contract object, now we have to take this data. We'll call this await contract, and we have to call this function which is already there in our contract, swap token to ETH. In that we have to pass the token name and the amount, converted amount, and we'll take this variable called receipt await data.wait. So this particular function allows us to wait and stop the function until the transaction is completed. So once we have the recipient, that's what we can return, and if anything goes wrong, we have to simply console log out the error, return the error. This one is very simple. It allows us to swap from token to ETH. So we are done with this. Now let's move ahead and work on the next function. Let's say export async function. We'll say swap token to token. In that we need a lot of information. We need the start token, the destination, amount. These are the three information we need. Then we have to take this try and catch. We have to get the contract object. Then we have to call this data await contract object, and we have to call the function and pass the information. So we'll pass the starting token. Make sure to follow the exact order which I'm following, because whatever order you have defined in your contract, you have to follow the exact order, otherwise the transaction will fail. So this is the start order, a start token. This one is the destination and the amount, the converted amount we have to pass. So it looks fine. Now we have to wait for the transaction. We'll say recipient data.wait. Once the transaction is completed, we have to simply return the receipt, and if anything goes wrong, we have to simply display that. So that's the function which allows us to swap from token to token. Now come back here. Now we have to build a function which allows us to get token balance, and that we have to pass the name and the address. We'll take this variable contract object. Once we have the contract object, we can simply call this balance contract.get balance. In that we have to pass the token name and the address, and this will return the balance of the user, and we can simply return that at the end. So this is the get token balance. Now we can come back here. We'll build a next function, get token address, which is very important because we are rendering all the token in our marketplace with the user balance. So in that we have to simply pass the name of the token, and it's going to return that. So we have to get the try and catch if anything goes wrong. Now we have to get the contract object. Once we have the contract object, we have to simply get the address. So we'll say contract object dot get token address, and we have to pass the token name. This will give us the address, and that's what we have to return. So this is the address, and we have to catch error if anything goes wrong. Good. So this is the function which allows us to get the address of a token. Now we can come here, we can build another function, and this will call increase allowance. So this will work in this way. So for example, that when user will buy the token, swap the token with ETH to any token, they don't need to call this particular function. But when they have to do the swap from token to token, we have to first check for the allowance, whether the decentralized contract, exchange contract, has allowance of the token or not. So if it's not, then we have to simply call this particular function. So we have to increase the allowance. So let's call this increase allowance, and that we have to pass the token name, and we have to pass the amount. Let's take this try and catch. So first we have to get the contract object. Once we have the contract object, now then we have to simply get the address of the token. So we'll take this get token address, pass the token name. Once we have the contract object, once we have the address, now we can simply check that. So we'll take this token contract, and we have to get the token contract. We'll pass the address. Then we can take the data token contract object, and we have this approve function. In that we have to simply pass the information, and this is the contract address, and now we have to simply pass the amount, converted amount, and this will increase the allowance for the decentralized exchange, so that our exchange can spend the token on behalf of the user. Pretty simple. Now we have to wait for the receipt. So we have to wait for the transaction to be completed. Once the transaction will complete, we have to return the receipt, and if anything goes wrong, we have to display the error as well. Parse error, message error, and that's the simple function we have. So what it does, it will allow the user to increase the allowance if they don't have the allowance for the decentralized exchange contract. So we're done with this. Now come back here. Let's build a next function. This will be get all history, and this one is pretty simple. It will simply return all the transaction the user have done on the decentralized exchange. So we'll take this one and we'll say try and catch contract object. Then we already have this particular function, so we'll get all history. We already have the contract object. On that we have to call this particular function get all history, and it's going to return the entire transaction. So we can take this variable called history transaction. We'll say get all history. We have to run a map. We'll say history index, and we have to simply arrange the data. So we'll take this history ID, which is there in history ID, and we have to convert it to a number. Then we have to take the token A, then we have to take the token B, and we have to take the input value. And here we are using this 2 ETH because this one is the display amount in the front end. When you are passing amount in the function in the contract, you have to convert it into a way. So you have to keep that thing in mind. Now let's do the same thing for the output. Then we have to do the user address, and that's the information we are getting from this particular function. It's going to return an array of the transaction, and then we have to simply return this one and close this function. We have to catch it if anything goes wrong, parse error message, and close that one. So this is the function which allows us to give us all the history of the transaction. So we are done with that. Now we can come here. We'll build a next function, two-way. We'll pass the amount, and it's going to simply convert the amount into way. So let's build this one for safer side, and we'll say two-way and convert it to a string. And now we have to build this particular function which allows us to format the error whenever the transaction will fail. So let's come back here. We'll say parse error message. In that we'll pass the error. We can take a variable JSON dot parse stringify. Then we have to simply return this and the error message, and that's the only thing we have to do here. So we have written so many functions. You can see these are the imports we have done. This is the very first function which allows us to swap from ETH to token. If I open this particular function, we have built a lot of logic. This is the second function which check the validity of the allowance, and we have passed the address of the contract, decentralized contract, because that's going to be the responsible for making the transaction on behalf of the user. Pretty good. Now this is the third one, swap ether token to token, get balance, get address, increase history, way, and parse error message. Pretty good. So come back here. Now close this one. We are done with this. So everything's looking pretty fine. We are done with all the important function which we have to work here in the utils. Now simply close this one, and what I'm going to do is, now let's come back to the pages and let's set up the things. So come back here in the pages, and now we have to work on the very first thing called app.js. So click on here, and first we have to import the style file, CSS file. Now we have to import the couple of important packages because we're going to use, and now we have to use couple of libraries which allow us to communicate with the wallets, and it will give us the multiple options. So you can build a custom logic, but I'm going to use this particular library. So we'll call it merge, and this is coming from merge. So this library is really powerful. If you want, you can check the documentation. We have the merge, then we have to import the rainbow, and we're going to use the icons. So we're going to use that. So we are importing the style file. Then we have to import the couple of methods. So first we have to get this default wallet. Then we have to import this rainbow kit provider. Then we have to import this dark theme. And the last one is going to be midnight theme. And that's all coming from our rainbow kit. So these are the methods we have in this particular library, and that's what we are using. Now we have to import the chain and the configuration, chain configuration, and create client and wing config. This particular library is really very powerful, and that's coming from our wing. Again, you can check this documentation. It gives a lot of customization opportunity for you, so you can custom the entire model of the portal connection as per your requirement, as per your brand. So we are getting all of these four methods: chain, configure chain, create client, and wig config. Once we have that, now we have to import the Infura provider, and that's coming from the wing provider Infura. So there is a multiple provider we have. We are using Infura. You can use Acmely, you can use other chains provider. Once we have the provider, and we can come back here and we have to do the couple of configuration. So now we have to get the chain and we have to get the provider, and this is coming from our configure chain. In that we have to pass couple of information. So first thing is going to be the chain, the network we are connected. So we'll call it Polygon Mumbai. If you are connecting with the mainnet, if you're connecting with Gorilla, if you're connecting with any network, you have to provide this, because this chain will contain all the network information, and that's what we are accessing. And we have to simply provide other information like Infura provider, and in that we have to provide the API key. You can go with this particular key, or you can go to the Infura and you can generate your own API key, but make sure to pause the video and get this particular key. I can provide to all of you guys. So make sure to get this API key from here, or you can simply go to the Infura and create your account and get your API key from there. Now we have to get the priority is going to be 1, and we have to simply close this one. So these are the information we are providing in our chain configuration. It can identify that which network we are configuring and what we want to interact with from which blockchain. So these are the information you have to provide in the chain configuration. So we are done with this. Now we can come back here. We can take a variable called connector, and this particular coming from the get default wallet, and that we have to set the information, means the app name. I'll call this custom decentralized exchange, and the second information we have to pass the chains, and that's how we can get the connector. So once we have the connector, we can come back here. We can take a wing client, and we have to configure this as well. And that we have to take this create client, and that we have to pass the auto connect to true. We'll take this connector, the object we have built on top, get default wallet method we have used to build our connector, and that's what we are passing in our ring client. And we have to pass the provider. So we got that all. Once we're done with the wing client, now we can come back here and let's work on the theme, because there is a two themes we have, light and dark. So I'll go with the dark one. So we'll say my theme, merge midnight theme, and then we have to define the color. So it's totally up to you. You can pick your brand color. I will go with this one. We'll say Asian color, and I'll go with the Asian color for ground white, and close that one. So this is the theme setup. Hope so far things are clear to all of you guys, that what we have done, what are the configuration we are doing. I'm going a little faster, so I believe that so far things are clear. You guys have understood that what we are doing and how we are building this entire logic. Now we can come here and let's build the function. So we'll say my app, and let's define that one. So we're going to take this component and we're going to take the page props. We're going to simply return. In that we have to use the providers we have imported. So first is going to be our wing config, and in that we have to pass the client. So like the client we already built, the wing client. Then we have to take this Rainbow kit provider. In that we have to provide the chains and the theme. Inside that we have to take this component and the page props, then simply close that one and wing config. And that's the only thing you have to do here in the app.js file. It's pretty good. And we have to export this my app. So far things are clear to all of you guys, and I believe that you guys have understood that what logic we have implemented here. You can see we have imported this global CSS and the package CSS and the merge library. Then we are getting some important functions which allow us to communicate and get some themes and provided from the Rainbow kit. Then we are getting the wing and the Infura. Then we are getting the chain configuration. Then we are getting the connector, giving the name and the chain. Then we have the wing client for our wallet. Then we have this theme. And here we have this my app. Close that one. So we are done with this particular configuration, and now we have to work on the index page. So what we have done so far: first, we have set up our project. Second, we have written the smart contract. Third, we have deployed our contract. Fourth, we have written all the important function in our utility files. And fifth, we have done the setup in our app.js with all the libraries. And now we have to build in the front end. So come back here in the index, and that's what we're going to work. So click here. First, we have to import React, and that's coming from React. Then we have to do the internal import. And here we have to import the footer, HeroSection, and header, card, and that's coming from the component index. Now we have to build the page called home, and it's going to be an async function. We have to call this return. Inside that, we have to take a div. It will have a class bg. Then we have to take the header. Then we have to take the HeroSection. Then we have to take the card, and we have to take the footer. So these are the 4 components we're going to display in our home page. And let's export this one. Default export is going to be home, and that's the only thing we have to do here in the index page, the home page. Save it, and looks pretty fine. So far things are clear to all of you guys. Now come back here and close this one. What we can do is, looks fine to me. So we can come here. So we have all of this. Simply do one thing, simply comment this one, and let's call it hey, and let's test this out, the entire setup we have done. So save it, and you can do one thing. We have saved this one, comment this, open up your terminal, and we have to start the application. So we'll type npm run dev, hit enter, and if I come back to the package.json file, you can see this is the command we are running, next dev. Save it and come back to the browser. You can see everything is working fine. Reload the page, and we have this hey. So looks pretty good. And now what we're gonna do is, let's write down all the CSS so we can use it as a utility classes in our project, because we are using Tailwind CSS and we have to add some custom classes for our design for the UI part. So simply come back here in the style file, and looks good. Come here in the style file, and we have to work on our home. So click on that, and that's what we're going to start working on. So we'll take a class called container. Inside that, we'll take this padding 0 to RAM. Then we'll take this main, call this min height 100 vh, padding 4 RAM 0, flex 1, display flex, flex direction column, justify content center, align item center. We can come here, we'll take this footer, display flex, flex 1, padding 2 RAM 0, border top 1 pixel solid, and we have our custom color, justify content center, align item center. Come here, we'll take a footer and we'll target the anchor, display flex, justify content center, align item center, flex grow 1. We'll target the title anchor, color custom color bluish, text direction none. We'll take a title anchor on over effect. We'll say title, and focus, we'll say title active, and we have to change the text direct decoration to underline. Then we'll take this title, margin 0, line height 1.15, font size 4 RAM, title, description, we'll say text align center. We'll take this description, margin 4 RAM 0, line height 1.5 RAM, line height 1.5, font size is going to be 1.5 RAM. We'll take the code, background, we're going to alpha color, border radius 5 pixels, padding 0.75 RAM, and font size is going to be 1.1 RAM. Font family is going to have this custom one. We have the font family. Now come back here, we'll target the grid, display flex, align item center, justify content center, flex wrap. We'll have the max width is going to be 800 pixels. We'll target the card, margin 1 RAM, padding 1.5 RAM, text align left, color init, text decoration none, border 1 pixel solid alpha color, border radius 10 pixels, transition color 0.15 easy, and we'll have a border color like 0.15 easy. Max width is going to 300 pixels. We'll take the card over effect, card focus, and we'll have card active. So color is going to be the third primary color. We'll have the border color. We can take the card H2, margin 0, 0, 1 RAM 0. We'll have the font size 1.5 RAM. We'll take the card P, margin 0, font size 1.5, 25 RAM. Line height is going to be 1.5. Logo height 1 em, margin left 0.5 em. Let's add a media query. So max width is going to be 600 pixels. Grid width is going to be 100%. Flex direction column. Then we'll target, come here. Let's take a second media query. We'll call it prefix column scan schema. Prefix column schema dark. We'll target the card footer, and we'll say border color. Then we'll target the code. We'll take the background color, and we have target the logo image. We'll say filter inverted 1, and that's the entire prefix color schema. So that's the entire CSS we have written here in this like home CSS file. So this is a main, footer, footer A, footer title. We have the titles, state, title, description, card, grid. We have card effects. Then we have card 2, card P, logo, and the media query. It's pretty good. So we are done with this entire CSS in the home file. Now we have to work on the global CSS. So come back here and let's configure the tailwind. So base, tailwind component, and we have the tailwind utils. So first we have to build the utility function. So we'll call it layer utilities, and we'll call this input type number, WebKit inherit spine button. Then we'll take the another input type, WebKit outer spine button, and we'll take this WebKit appearance none, and we'll have margin 0. And that's the utility model we have. Now we can come here. We'll take the HTML body. We'll call this padding is going to be 0. Margin is going to be 0. Font family is going to be Apple system. So we have this default font. So we have this default fonts. Come here. Now we have to target the anchor. We'll say color is going to be inherit. Text decoration none. Then we have to target the global. And that we have to say box sizing to border box. Then we'll tag the media query. We'll say prefix color schema dark, and in that we'll take this HTML color schema is going to be dark. Then we have to target the body, and that we have to say color white, background black, and that's the entire classes, the CSS classes we have written here in the global file. So this is the tailwind configuration, because most of the CSS will be applied with the tailwind, but we have these resets we have done, the modification we have done in our CSS file, which we're going to use it. So far things are pretty good. I hope you guys have understood that what we have done. We have not written huge lines of CSS. This is the simple setup we have done, because the most of the CSS will come from the tailwind. Pretty good. Now close this one, and now we can come back in the home page, index page, and now we can start working on the very first component. So you can see our application is still running. If I save and come back to the browser, you can see it's dark and we have this particular color. Looks pretty fine. So the entire setup, it looks pretty good. Now we can start with the very first component, the header one. So let's do one thing. Let's cut this and paste here, and we can simply remove this one. So now we're going to work on the header, and header component has couple of multiple components. So if I come back to the components, here you will find all the components we are using in our application. So we have the CSV folder. In that you will have all the CSV icons, which is already given to you in the starter file. So the very first thing we have to work on this token balance component, because that's what we're going to import in the header components. So before we work on the header component, we have to work on the token balance and we have to work on the transaction status. These are the two components. So let's come back to token balance. So this is what we have. Let's come back to the token balance. First, we have to import React, use effect, use state, and use ref, and that's coming from React. Then we have to import the Ether package, that's coming from Ether. Then we have to import the toaster. This will display the notification if the user is not connected. It will display on the top of the box. I hope you guys have noticed when I gave you the domain. So I'm using this particular library. You can build your own custom, but that's unnecessary work. So we'll need this toaster, and that's coming from the React hot toast. Then we have to import the clipboard, so like the icons, clipboard icon. Then we have a clipboard checked icon. Then we have plus icon, and that's all coming from the hero icon outline. So we have the icons. You can use React icon instead of this, but I will go with this one because this one is very easy. Now we have to do the internal import. We have to import the transaction status. So this is the component we're going to work next, and that's coming from our index file. Then we have to import the get token address. So this is the function we have built in our utils files. So get token address. Then we have this get token balance, and we have to this increase allowance, and it's coming from utils context. So these are the function we have already built. Now we have to work on the component token balance. It's going to receive couple of props. So it's going to receive the name and the address of the wallet. That's what we're going to send in this particular component. Let's take a variable call. Now let's take a state variable. We'll say balance, set balance, and by default we're going to set this slash, means no, this particular string. Then we have to take another state variable. We'll take this token address, set token address, and we'll say empty. Then we can take another state variable for icon. So we'll say copy icon, set copy icon, and we're going to set the default. So we'll say icon clipboard icon. Then we can take the transaction pending status, because we have to display the pop-up model where we have to display the status of the transaction, whether transaction is completed or it's still going on. Then we'll say set transaction pending, and it's going to be false by default. Then we'll take our notifier component, means the toaster. So we'll say notify error, and in that we have to simply pass the message. We'll say toaster.error. We'll pass the message, and we have to set the duration, that how long you want the notification bar to be displayed. So I'll go with something like 6 seconds. That's what we have here. Now we have to take a variable called this notify success, and we'll use the same one, toaster.success. In that we have to say transaction completed. Then we can take a use effect, and in that we have to take a statement check. So we'll say if name and the wallet is there, then we have to call this particular function called fetch token balance, and we have to call this fetch token address. Else we have to call this particular one set balance to empty, and we have to simply call this particular function whenever the name or the wallet address changes. So that's the use hook we have. Now we can come back here. We'll take a async function, and we have to build the function we have passed. So we have to build this particular one, fetch token balance. In that we have to simply call this balance await get token balance. We already have this function, and in that we have to pass this to name and the wallet address. This will return the balance, and we can simply console log out the balance. So we can come back here. We'll take a variable called fetch balance ethers.js format unit. Will pass the balance, and we have to pass it in a string form, and we can divide the 18 decimal points, means the ether, and we'll say set balance to our state variable. So that's the simple function we have, fetch token balance. Now we have to build the second function called fetch token address, and let's come here. Let's take the address. We'll say await get token address. We already have this function. In that we have to pass the name of the function. name of the token. So we'll say name, and we'll say set token address to the address. And these are the two functions we have which we are calling in our use hook. Now we can come back here, we'll return the entire JSX. So we can come back here, we'll take a div, it will have a class flex max 2, margin x 2 pixels, border 1 pixels, rounded L, rounded right large, and we'll have border the custom color. Inside that we'll take another div, it will have a flex item center, background zing 900, text zin 300, and with fit padding 2 pixels and padding x 3 pixels, and we have rounded L large. Inside that we'll take a p, it will have a class called text small, and we have to give the name, padding class small text and the name. We can come back here and we can take a p tag, it will have a class called bz zinc 800, padding 0.5, and padding x is going to be 3, or margin left is going to be 3 pixels. We'll have the rounded large text zin 100, and in that we're going to display our balance. So simply close the p tag. Now we'll close the div. So we have closed the p, we have closed the div. Now we can come back here, let's take a div, it will have a class called flex item center, padding 2, padding x 2 pixels, and we have a custom background color. We'll say rounded R large. Inside that div, we'll go and take this particular icon. So we'll say copy icon dot icon, and in that we have to simply pass couple of props. So we'll take this class name height 6 pixels. We'll have the cursor pointer. Then we'll have the on click function we'll have. And what we want to do is on the on click event, we'll call this navigator clipboard write text, and then we'll pass the address of the token. So user can click and they can copy the address. So that's the on click function we have on the clipboard, and we have to set this set copy icon to icon clipboard checked. So when the successfully copy, we have to change the status to the icon, and we have to simply close this on click function. Then we have to close this copy icon. Then we have to close the div, and we can take this check, because if the transaction is in pending mode, when the user is doing the transaction, we have to display the transaction pending component model. So we'll check that if transaction pending is true, then we have to display this particular component transaction status. Pretty good. Now we can simply take this toaster, because we have to display the message. So that's what we have to call, and we have to simply close the div, and at the end we have to simply return this particular component. So we'll say export default token balance, and that's the only thing we have to do here in this token balance component. So we have built a lot of functions which allow us to interact with the function. So you can see first we have imported these packages, we have this toaster, then we have this library, then we are getting this icons, then we have this particular component which we're going to work next, and we have all of this function. So if I come back here and if I take you to the utils, and here we have this particular one. So we have built all of this function, and we are going to get this function one by one as per our requirement. So pretty good to me. Now this looks fine. So that's what we're going to work next. Then this is the logic we have built. We have taken the state variable for the icon, for the balance, for the name, and for the transaction and the notification. This is the use hook where we are calling this particular function, which allows to fetch the balance and the address of the name of the token. Then we have built this entire JSX. That's very simple. We have to start working on the transaction status. So click here, and we have to import now we have to import couple of things. So we'll say import fragment useref use state, and that's coming from React. Then we have to import loading, and it's coming from the React. Then we have this dialog transaction, and it's coming from Henlyshu React. We already installed all of these packages. If you want to know more about these packages, that what are the customization you can do, check the docs. Okay, I'm using this. Now we have to build this export default function, and we'll say transaction status. Then we can come back, let's take a variable, the use state, we'll say open, set open, and by default is going to be true. Then we have to take this to prevent closing of the dialog. Then we'll build a function called handle close. In that, we have to simply call this set open to true and close that one. Now then we can come here, we'll take this return, and we have to work on the J6. So we'll call this transaction dot root, and on that we have to set the prop. So again, we have a lot of method which we can pass. So I'm calling this show. On that we have to say open, and we have to set this as, in that we're going to pass the fragment. Then we can take this dialog, in that we have to send the props. So we have to send the class. We'll say div. You can define any HTML element you want to create. Here I want to create div. You can create p tag, h1, span, it's totally up to you. Then we have to define the classes which we want to apply. So fix, we have gen index 999, insert 0, overflow y, auto, and we have to add an onClick function. So we'll call the function we have built, handle close, and close the dialog. Inside the dialog, we have to simply pass a div. It will have a class called flex, item center, justify center, min height, screen, padding top 4 pixels, padding x 4 pixels, padding bottom 20 pixels, text center, on a small screens block, and on a small screen padding 0. Inside the div, we're going to take this transactions child, because the root, first we have taken the root, means the outer layer, and now we are working on the inner layer. So transaction child, in that we have to send the props. So we'll take this as fragment. Then we'll take this enter easy out duration 300, because we have to add that animation. Then we'll take this enter from opacity 0, and we'll take this enter to opacity 100. Then we'll define the label easy in duration 200. These are the animation property. Then we'll define this leave from opacity 100, and we'll have a leave to opacity 0. Then close this one, transaction child. Inside that, we have to take a dialog, and we'll say overlay. It will have a class called fixed, insert 0, background gray 500, busy opacity 75, transaction opacity, and we have to close this dialog. Then we can come back here. Let's close this transaction clip, transaction child, and the dialog overlay is a self-closing div, you can call it. Okay, then we have to close this transaction child. We can come here. We'll see, this looks fine. Now let's give me this comment. So we'll say this element is strict to browser into centering the model content. So like we have to simply center the entire component, entire pop-up model in the center of the screen. So we can come back here. We'll take this span, and it's going to have a class. So we'll say hidden. On a small screen, we'll say inline block, and on a very small scene, we'll say angle between, and we'll say height screen. Let's call this Arial hidden true, and inside that we can take this HTML icon, and we have to simply close this span. Pretty good. Now we can come back here. Let's take a transaction child, another component. Inside that we have to send the props. So we have to send the fragment, and we have to send the entry. So the same logic we have to apply. Then we have to display the entry from. So we'll have opacity 0, translate y4, and small screen translate y0, and we have the scale value. Then we have to enter to opacity 100, translate y0, and we'll scale value is going to be 100. Leave easy in duration 200. Then we have leave from opacity 100, translate y0, and we'll have the scale value 100. And this one is the 2, opacity 0, translate y4, and now we'll say translate y0, and on small screen we'll say scale 95. Close this one. Inside that, we have to take this div. It will have a class called status, inline block, align bottom, padding y6, background white, border rounded large, text center, overflow hidden, shadow excel, transform, transition, all, and we have to define the width on the medium screen 35%, and on a small screen we'll say that margin y 8 pixels, align item, align middle, max with large, with full. So these are the classes we are applying. Inside the div, we have to take the div. It will have a class called padding x 4 pixels, padding y 4 pixels, item center, justify content. On a small screen we'll say padding 6, flex, and flex row reverse. All of these classes we are applying on the small screen, not on the default screen. Inside this div, what we have to do is we'll take a loading. We already imported this one, and we'll say complete the transaction and pass it. Close this particular loading component, then we'll close this div, and now we have to simply come back here. Let's take a p tag and display the message. So we'll take a class, we'll say padding x4, padding y 4 pixels, text back, item center, text small, justify center. On a small screen padding 6, flex row reverse. Inside the p tag we'll display the message. We'll say transaction would usually take 12 seconds. So this is the arrow icon we are using, an HTML tag. You can define any value, but this is going to display. You can make it dynamic, but we want to make it simple. So that looks pretty fine, and we have to close the p tag. Then we can close the div, and we have to close this transaction child. Then we have to close the div, close the dialog, close the transaction root, and we have to simply save it. So that's the entire component we have written for the transaction status. So we are importing all of these important libraries and the components. Then we have taken the state variable. This is the simple function for closing the model, and we are using this elements, the components. We are passing the props. That's what we are using, and passing all of these props. We have the dialog, we have the child components with the animation, we have the dialog, and all of this information we have. This is the model, and this is the child component for displaying the message and the transaction. So this looks pretty good. So these are the simple logic we have implemented and we are using in our application. So that's all we have here. So we are done with this entire transaction component. Simply close this one, and we are done with this token balance as well. Now we're going to simply start working on our header component. So come back here, close this one. So we are done with the internal component. Now we have to work on the header component. So click on that. Now we have to import React use effect, use state, and that's coming from React. Then we have to import the connect button, and that's coming from our library like Rainbow Kit. Then we have to import the user account, and that's also coming from Wing. We have to import our toaster to display the message, and that's coming from the hot toast. Then we have to do a couple of internal import. We can say import menu, logo, token balance, and that's coming from index. Then we can work on the header component. So we have to take a state variable. We'll say token balance, set token balance, and we'll take this use state. Then we can take this data, we'll take this address, and that's coming from user account. Then we have to take this notified connect wallet, and we have to display the message if the user is not connected. We'll say connect wallet, and we have to give the duration 2 seconds if the user is not connected. Then we have to take this use effect, and we have to simply call this set token balance, and that we have to get this fragment. In that we have to simply call the component we have built, the token balance component. We'll take this token balance, and we have to pass the name and the address, and that's what we are receiving in the token balance component. So we'll pass the name of the token, and we'll pass the address. We're going to simply replicate this 2 because 2 or 3. So let me do that. This one is for BNB, and this one is going to be, let's say, called Siba U, and the address, because that's what we're going to display on the top. You can display your favorite token, the most frequent and high selling token you can display. So that's the one we have, and simply close this fragment, and that's what initially we're going to render. So we'll build this particular logic. If there is no address, then we have to call this particular function notify connect. It's going to display the pop-up model. It will say the user to connect with a wallet. Now we have to simply close this, and we have to call this particular hook whenever there is a change in the address. So we are done with this hook. Now we can come back here. Let's return and let's build the JSX. So we'll take this header. It will have a class padding 4, text gray 100. Inside that we'll take a div. It will have a class called container flex justify between height 16 margin x auto. Inside the div we have to take a div. It will have a class called flex. Inside the div we have to take a anchor, and we have to display our menu. So we'll take this rail, no opener, no referrer. Then we have to define this href because we don't want to send the user anywhere. Now we have to define the Arial label to be back to home page, and we have to display this class called flex item center padding 2 pixels, and close this anchor. Inside that we can display our logo, which we have already imported. Then we have to simply close this one. Now we have to define our items, the menu list. So we'll take this UL. It will have a class item stretch hidden space 3 space x3, and we'll have a large called flex on a large device. Then we'll take the li. It will have a class called flex. Inside the li we have to take this anchor, and we have to assign the property. So we'll take this real, no opener, no referrer. We have to provide the destination where we want to redirect the user, so home page. And we have to define the AD classes with class name flex item center padding x4 and padding bottom -1 dark. Let's say border transparent. Text will have our custom color, and border is going to be having a custom color. Then we'll close this one. Inside that we have to display our text. So we'll say swap and close this anchor. Now we have to take a couple of more menu. So close this li. Now let's take another one, and we have to assign the same property. So let me do that very quickly. Simply close that one and close the UL. So these are the menu we are displaying. You can display as many as you want. So we're done with the NFT, we're done with the pool. Now let's come back here. Let's take it, close the div. Now we have to take a div. It will have a class called item center flex string 0 hidden on a large divide. We have to say flex, and in that we're going to display our token component, means token balance component. In that we have to pass the two information, name and the wallet address. We can simply replicate it. So we'll say token balance, give the name to C/U, and this is the address because C/U is my favorite and I have a couple of investment in that. Again, I don't like to give you any investment amount that which coin is really good. This is my personal choice and I have my investment. But before you invest in any token, any project, you have to make your own research. Don't rely on my word. So simply call our correct wallet and close this div. Take a button. It's going to have a class called padding 4 On our last screen, we'll say hidden. Inside that, we'll take the menu because that's what we have to display, the icon, and we have to close this one. Then we have to close the div. We'll take this toaster because if the user is not connected, we have to display the error message. Close that one and close the header, and we are done with that. Now we have to simply export this header, and that's the all we have to do here in the header component. So we have built our header components. First we have imported this, imported the components, then build the status, getting the account, we are building the notify error message, then we have the use hook which will render, and we are passing the information of the token and the address, and we are calling this, and we have this entire JSX. This is for the logo. Now we can come back here, and we have already provided you all the logo in the starter file, so you can simply get it from here. All of this is already given to all of you guys, so that's what we have. Now if I come back into this, the header, so we have all of this and we have written this. So close this one, and this is the UL. You can take as many menus as you want. So this one is the token, this one is the NFT, and this one is the pool. Close this one, and here we have our token component and the button and the menu button and the toaster. Looks fine. Now you can see our application is running. Now simply come back to the browser, and here you can see everything's working absolutely fine. We have the menu, we have the logo, and we have the token components. So right now we are not connected with the wallet. That's why you can see there is no balance is displaying. And if I reload, you can see the pop-up model will pop up, connect wallet, and the message is displaying because we are not connected. Reload, and here you will have that one. Now if you click on this connect wallet, going to give you this pop-up model, and you can pick your provider, the wallet provider which you want to use to make the transaction. So we have this Rainbow, Coinbase wallet, MetaMask, Wallet Connect, tons of options we have. It's totally up to you that which one you want to use it. I would like to go with the MetaMask, and here I'm connected, and you can see the wallet address. If you click here, it's going to open this pop-up model. You can copy your address, or you can disconnect. So I can simply disconnect, I'm out. I can simply go back and I can connect my wallet once again, and you can see the balance is also displaying because the address I have used to connect with the application, it has no fund. Any one of this token is not there, so it's also working fine. You can simply navigate to different pages, the pool, NFT, and you can check all the pages. Pretty fine. You can simply copy, open a new tab and paste here, and here you have the address. Disconnect. So things are looking pretty fine. No issue we have. You can connect and you can disconnect any moment. Now come back to the VS Code. So we are done with this header component. That's the only thing we have to do here in the header component. Now we have to move to the next component. So looks good. Close this one, and now we have to work on the hero component. In that we have to do a lot of work because hero component, it's entirely reliable for making all the functionality. So I'll simply cut this portion and paste here. Click here and get back to the HeroSection component. Now we have to import the React. Then we have to do the internal import. Then we'll call this, we have to import the, let's say, swap component, and that's coming from index. Then we'll build our HeroSection. We have to build the entire JSX. So let's call this return. We'll take a section. It will have a class called background. We'll have an alpha color. We'll text gray 100. Inside that, we'll take the div. It will have a class called contain flex column, justify center, padding 6, and margin X auto. On a small screen, padding 12. On a large screen, padding Y24. On a large device, flex row, justify between. Inside that, we have to take a div. It will have a class called flex column, justify center, padding 6, text center, rounded small, large screen max, width medium, and extra large will say max width large, text left. Inside that, we'll take a h1 and it will have a class, and we have to display our title. So we'll say text 5XL font bold. We'll take this lead. On a small screen, we'll say text 6XL, and we'll say token. We'll give a space and we'll take a span. It will have a class called text. We'll have our second color. We'll say marketplace and close the span. Then we have to close our h1. Come back down. We'll take a p. It will have a class called margin top 6, margin bottom 8. We'll have a text large. On a small screen, we'll say margin bottom 12. And we'll display our text message. So let me quickly type it. Let's give the break. Give the class. We'll say hidden. On a medium, we'll say inline. On a large, we'll say hide. And we'll give this text. And close the p tag. Then we'll take a div. It will have a class called flex column space y 4 pixels. On a small screen's item center, justify center, left row, small screen space y 0 space x4, large, justify start. Inside that, we'll take the anchor, and we have to assign the same property. We'll say no opener, no referer, href. We don't need to redirect anywhere. Class padding x 8 pixels, padding y 3 pixels, text large, font semi bold, rounded, bg, and we'll have a text gray 900. And close that one. Inside that, we can display the text get start and close this one anchor. That's the first button we have. Now we have to take the second button. Let's assign the same property. Border gray 100. And looks good to me. Now simply close this one and we have to give our text. So we're going to call it swap ERC20 and close that one. And close the div. Close the div. Now we can take a div and in that we're going to display our swap component. So we'll have a class called flex item center, justify center, padding 6, margin top 8 pixels. On large screen, we'll say margin top 0. Height is going to be 72. On a small screen, we'll say height is going to be 80 pixels. And on large, we'll say height is going to be 96. Extra large, we'll say 112. And 2XL is going to be 128. So many classes. If you want to know more about it, you can simply check the doc of Tailwind CSS. There you will find everything. Inside the div, we're going to simply display our swap component. And we have to simply close this one. So we have this two section. Now we have to close the div, close the section, and we have to simply make it default export HeroSection. And that's the only thing we have to do here. So let's save it. So we have this import, we have this particular component which we're going to work next, and we have built all of this JSX. These are the pretty simple one. We have used a lot of Tailwind classes here. This is the button we have, and this is the first section. And here we have the second section. So if I comment this one and type hey and come back to the browser, you can see I'm getting this particular error message. Not a big deal. Simply redo the page and no issue we have. Everything's working fine. So this is the two section we have. The left hand section, we have this token marketplace and there is a high. So we have to build our swap one. That's what we have to build next. Things are looking fine. Reload the page, no issue we have. Come back here. Now let's bring it back. Remove this one and come back to the swap component. Click here and go back to the swap component. And here we are in the swap component. So first we have to import React, use effect, use state, and use ref. That's coming from React. Then we have to import the functions from our context like has valid allowance. Then we have to import increase allowance. Then we have to import swap ETH to token. Then we have to import swap token to token. And we have to import swap token to token. So we have all of this function in our utils. The context has valid allowance, increase allowance, swap ETH to token, swap token to ETH, and swap token to token. And that's coming from the context. Good. Now we can come back. We have to import the config arrows down icon, and that's coming from our hero icons React outline. We got the icons. Now we have to simply get the swap field, means the input field we go to build, and that's coming from the swap field in the same directory. Now we have to import the transaction status. That's also coming from the same directory. We have already worked and built this transaction status. Now we have to import the toaster for displaying the message. Then we have to import the default value ETH, and that's coming from our Utils cell token because all of these values are there, cell token. Now we have to import the ETH and two-way, and that's also coming from the Utils. Then we have to import the use account, and it's coming from the wing. Come back here, we'll take a swap component. Inside that, we're not going to receive any props because all the logic will be happen right up here. So let's come back here. Let's take a state variable. We'll say starting token and the destination token. Okay. So we'll say start token, set start token to be the ETH. That's the default token we want to set. And the destination token is going to be our default value. So user can click and they can select. So these are the two tokens we have. Then we can come back here. We'll take a variable called input value and set input value. It will be an empty. Then we have to take this output value, set output value, and it's going to be an empty. Then we have to take a input value ref, and that's what we're going to get from useRef. Then we have to set the output value, and it's also going to be getting from useRef. Then we can come back here. We'll take this const is reverse. useRef by default will say false, and we'll take this increase allowance. We'll say increase allowance. So this is the message we're going to display once the user will get the notification for calling the increase allowance function. So increase allowance, and the second variable will take this enter amount. So the enter amount. The third variable is going to be connect wallet. So we'll say connect wallet, and all of this state we're going to change on the swap component. So if user is not connected, we're going to display this connect wallet. If the user is not put the amount, we're going to display that. But if user have not allowance, we're going to display that. So these are the three states we have for the swap button. Now we're going to take the fourth one called swap. Now we have to take a variable called start token object, and in that we have to define the data of the first token. And the same thing we have to do for the second token as well. So let's do with the first one. First thing is going to be the ID, and in that we're going to simply pass this src token one. That's the one we have to pass. And for the value pair, we're going to say input value, and for the set value, in that we're going to call this set input value. So this is the hook we have built, and all we have to do is to simply update that, and we have to set this default value to going to be starting token, and we'll say ignore value to destination token, and we'll say set token to set src token, and close that one. So this is the first object of the token. First we have the ID, second we have the value, then we are setting up the value in our state. When we are getting the default value, then we are ignoring the destination value, and third and the last we are setting up the token. Now let's do the same thing with the destination token. We'll take that ID, then we'll take the value, we'll call it output value because this is what we're going to allow, we're going to give the output. Then we'll take the set value, then we'll take this default value, destination, and we'll have the ignore value, and the last one is going to be set token, is going to be set destination token, and close this one. So these are the two objects we have for the two tokens. Now we can come back here, we'll take a variable called src token complete, and we'll say set src token complete. By default we're going to have an empty data. Then the second data, we're going to take this destination token, set destination token to be an empty data. Then we can come back here, let's take a variable called swap button text, and we'll say set swap button text. By default we're going to allow them to call enter an amount. When they will land on the home page, this is the text message we're going to display, but based on the transaction and user interaction, we have to change the state of this button. So this is the default data we are setting. Now we can take another one, transaction pending, and we'll say set transaction pending. So by default it will be false. Once the transaction will complete, we have to turn it to true. Then we can come back here, we'll take a notifier error, we'll pass the message, we'll say not toast error message, and we have to set the duration 600. 6,000, sorry. Then we have to build the success. In that we'll say toaster success and we'll send the message transaction completed. We can come back here, we'll take this variable, we'll call it address, and that's we are getting from use account, and the hook we have imported from Wing, and it will give us the address of the user. Now we can take this use effect and we'll call this handling the text of the submitting button. So we'll take this if address means the address is not there, then we'll call this set swap button to the connect wallet. So we are changing the state of the button. Else if input value is not there and output value is not there, then we have to say that set swap button to enter amount. Else we have to say set swap button to swap. Means these are the three states we have. If the user is not connected, then we have to say connect wallet. If user is connected but he hasn't provided the amount, then we have to say enter amount. And if the user have done all of this too, then we have to say swap. And we have to call this hook whenever any input value change and output value change and the address change. So that's the hook we have. Now we can call another use hook. In that we have to check for a condition. We'll say if document dot active element, so this is the method we have on the document. We're checking if that's not equal to the output value ref dot current. So that's the first condition. We are checking for that document active element is not equal to the output value ref dot current. That's the first check. Then the second check is document dot active element dot area label is not equal to source token. Okay, because we have assigned the aerial attribute to the element. That's the second check. And the third check we have to simply call this reverse is reverse dot current is not true. And that's the three check we are doing. Once we pass off this once we pass the three change, then we have to simply populate the data. So we'll say populate output value, and that we can simply pass this input value. Well, they'll say set source token camp to be our the in swap input field we're going to create next the component. In that we're going to simply pass this data. So it's going to be a form of object. So we'll pass this token start object, means the token entry token, and the second one is the like input value ref. So these are the important data we're going to pass as a prop into this swap field. Once we're done with that, we have to do another check. We'll say if input value dot length is equal to 0, then we have to simply call this set output value to be empty, because if you don't do the empty, it's going to throw an error because it needs something. And we want to call this hooks whenever the input value and the destination token state changes. So that's the use state hook we have. All this logic, we have built this particular condition, then we are populating the data, then we are calling this particular set field and passing these two objects, and at the end we are simply checking for the length and the data. And whenever the data is getting changed in the hook like input field, and whenever the data is changing in the input value and the destination token, we have to call this hook. Simple logic. Now we can come back here, we'll take another use hook, and in that what we have to do is we have to check for a condition. We'll say if document dot active element is not equal to the input value dot current. So that's the first check. The second check is document dot active element dot area label is not equal to the destination token. So first we have done with the starting token, now we have to work on the destination token. So the same logic we have to build here. So again we have to check for the is reverse dot current and close that, and then we have to simply build the logic. So we'll take this populate value and we'll say output value. We'll check for a data, we'll say set destination token complete, and we have to simply update that in swap field, mean the destination token object, and the ref output value. And here we have to do the if check. We'll say output value length is equal to 0. Then we have to set this set input value, and we have to simply say resetting the reverse value if it's set. We'll say if reverse dot current, then we have to simply take this is reverse dot current equal to false, because it will give you either true or false, and that's what we are checking in all the condition. And then we want to call this hook whenever there is a change in output value, starting token. So this is the second hook we have for the destination token. Now we can come back here, and now we have to build the JSX. We have built all of this logic. Now that we have the actual work to work on the JSX. So come back here, we'll take a div, it will have a class, border, and 1 pixels, rounded, large, border. We have our custom color, background, our alpha, second alpha color. Then we have the width is going to be 100%, padding 4 pixels, padding X 6 pixels, rounded, XL. Inside this div, we're going to take another div. It will have a class called flex, item center, justify between, padding Y 4 pixels, padding X 1 pixels. Inside the div, we're going to take a P tag, and it will have a class P. Inside the div, we'll take a P and we'll have a text called swap. And we'll take our cog icon, and we have to send the props. So we'll have a class. So we'll say height is going to be 6. It's going to be a self-closing element. Then we have to close the div. So this is the first set of div we have. First we are taking the text, then we are displaying our icon with a close self-closing and assigning a class. Now we can come back here, we'll take a div, it will have a class called relative, background, our second alpha color, third alpha color. Then we'll have the padding 4 pixels, padding Y 6 pixels, rounded, XL large, margin bottom 2 pixels, border 2 pixels, border transparent. On over effect, we'll say border zinc 600. Inside this div, we have to take the data of the SRC token complete. That's the information we have to display. Then we can come back here, we'll take this arrow, so small down icon, and we'll take this class, we'll say absolute left 1/2, translate X -1 by 2, bottom -6 pixels, height 10, and padding 1 pixels. Biggie is going to be our alpha color, and we'll have a border 4 pixels, border zinc 900, text zinc 300, rounded XL, cursor pointer. On over effect, we'll say scale 110, and we'll have a on click function. We'll say handle reverse exchange. Then we'll close this, and it's a close self-closing icon. Then we can come here, we'll close this div. Let's take a div, it will have a class called BG, alpha color, padding 4 pixels, padding Y 6 pixels, rounded XLs, margin top 2 pixels, border will have a 2 pixels, border transparent, height, over effect, border zinc 600. Inside this div, we have to take a destination token, the information. Then we have to simply close this div. Come here, we'll take a button. Let's assign the properties. So we'll have a class get swap button class name. So this is the function we're going to build, and it's going to change the class, the coloring and the text based on the user interaction. So if the user need to increase the allowance, we'll have a yellow color. So that kind of things we're going to do it. So we'll have this class. Then we can take this on click function, and we have to pass this data. So first we'll take this if swap button text is deeply equal to increase allowance, then we have to simply call this handle increase allowance function. This is the function we're going to build. Else if swap button text is equal to swap, then we have to call this handle swap function. So this is the if else statement we have, checking for 2 condition and calling 2 different function. Now close this one button, and inside that we have to display the text swap button text, and close the button. That's the dynamic button we have. Now we're going to simply take this transaction. So if transaction is pending, means if the transaction is true, then we have to display this transaction status component we have already built. Now we have to take this toaster for displaying the notification messages, and close this div, close this div. And now we have built all the JSX, all the logic, and now we have to build the actual function which we're going to attach into our swap components. Like for swapping, the function we have declared, like handle increase allowance, handle swap, all of the function we're going to build it. So let's come back here. It's going to be async function and we're going to call it handle swap. So in that we have to take this if statement. So we'll say if starting token is equal to ETH and destination token is not equal to ETH, because that's the check we have to do. We not allow the user to swap from ETH to ETH. We need two different tokens. Then we have to take this perform swap function. So that's the function we're going to build it. Else we're going to simply check whether there is allowance when the swap deals with token to ETH to token. So that's the check we have to do. So when the user is doing the swap from token to ETH or token to token, we have to check for the allowance, whether the contract, the decentralized contract we have built, it has the allowance access or not. So that's what we have to do in the else statement. So let's check that. We'll say set transaction pending to true. Then we'll check this variable called result await has valid allowance. So this is the function we have built. All we have to do is to pass the address and the starting token and the increase value. These are the three information we are passing, which will return that what is the allowance for the contract. So that's the result we have. Now we have to simply set this transaction pending to false. Then we have to check for another condition. If result, then perform this particular function, like perform swap. That's the function we're going to build it. Else we have to call this handle insufficient allowance. So this is the function we're going to simply call it. Simply close that one and close this one. So this is the first set of function we are doing. We have multiple sub function which is getting called into this function, and we are doing multiple check. Now we have to build all of this function here. So come back here. Let's take this async function and we're going to call this handle increase allowance. So we have to allow the user to increase the allowance. So in that we have to call this text increase the allowance, and we'll take this set transaction pending to true. Then we can take this wait increase allowance and we have to pass the start token. Then we have to pass the input value. Then we have to set this set transaction pending to false. Once the transaction is completed, then we have to set the swap button to swap again. So once the allowance is completed, we are changing the status of the swap button. So user can click one more time and they can swap. So this time we're going to say set swap button text to swap, and we can close that one. So this is the function we have for handle increase allowance. Now we have to work on the next function. We'll say function handle reverse exchange. In that we have to simply pass the data. So we can come back here. We'll take a setting the reverse value to prevent the input and output values. So come back here. So we'll take this reverse dot current equal to true. Then we have to check. We'll say we have to check couple of conditions. First, swap token means start token to the destination token. Second, we have to check for the value input value to the output value. So these are the two things we have to keep in mind. So let's come back here. We'll take this set input value. In that we have to pass this output value. Then we'll take this set output value to input value. Once we're done with that, in the reverse way, because we have to check for both the condition, the amount. Then we'll take this set SRC token, because as I told you that when you are doing the swap from token to token, both the token will have the exact value. If one token cost 1 ether, the second token will cost the same 1 ether. So that's the condition we are building. Now we have to set the starting token. So we'll call the destination token. And the same thing we have to do with the next one. In that we have to pass the starting token. Then we have to simply close this one. So this is the entire function we have for checking for the reverse exchange, because mainly we are displaying the value in the front end whenever the users try to swap. So that's the function which allow to display the data. Now we can come back here. Let's build our next function. We'll call this get swap button class, because we have these 3 different states for the button. In that, what we're going to do is we have to check for condition. So we'll say let class name. In that we have to define all the classes which we want to apply based on the condition. So we'll say padding 4 pixels, width full, margin y 2 pixels, rounded XL. Then we have to take this class plus class, and we'll say swap button text equal to enter amount, or swap button text equal to connect wallet. In that we have to simply apply these particular classes. Text zin 400, background zin 800, pointer event none. Else we have to apply different classes. So we'll say bg blue 700. Then the second condition is that swap button text equal to increase allowance. Then we have to apply and change the background color. So we'll say background yellow 600, otherwise we have to say empty. And at the end we have to simply return the class name. So that's our dynamic classes we are applying in the button. Pretty simple. Close this one. Now we can come back here. Let's build the next function, and we'll say populate output value, because that's what we have to display. So in that we're going to say if destination token equal to default value, or starting token equal to default value, then we have to take this if input value and input value it false, then we have to take this return nothing, otherwise we have to do something. So we'll take this try and catch to catch an error if anything goes wrong. In that we'll take this if start token is not equal to the ETH and destination token is not equal to the ETH, then we have to set the output value to be the input value. Pretty simple. Else we have to say if start token equal to the ETH and destination token not equal to the ETH. In that we have to do this. So we have to take this variable, we'll say output value, and we'll say to ETH. That's the function we have built. In that we have to pass this way amount. We have to first convert it into a way, then we have to pass this into the ether conversion function. In that we'll say input value, and we'll display the decimal points is going to be 14. Then we have to set this particular value to an output value. Else if start token is not equal to the ETH and the destination token is equal to ETH, then we have to do the vice versa, the same thing, the same condition we have to check for here. So we'll pass the same value, and we have to simply set the output value to the output value, because we have to check for both the condition. And at the end we have to simply catch error if anything goes wrong. So we'll take this set output value to 0, like by default, if anything goes wrong, and close this particular function. So we are done with this particular function. Pretty simple. Now go ahead, let's come ahead, let's take a function. We'll say populate input value. In that we have to check for a condition. So we'll say that destination token is equal to default value. That's the first check. Then the second check we have to do is SRT token is equal to default value, and we have the output value. So whatever we have done for the input, we have to do the same thing with the output value. So let's do the same thing. We'll take a try and catch. If token is equal to ETH, not equal to ETH, then destination token is not equal to ETH, then we have to set that to output value. Then we'll say else if exactly the same thing, SRT token equal to ether, a destination token is not equal to ETH. Then we have to simply take a output value, convert it, and then we have to simply update it to the set input value to the output value. And the last condition we have is that if starting token is not equal to the ETH and destination token is equal to ETH, then we have to simply take a variable and we have to do exactly the same conversion, and we have to simply update it. So set input value to be output value, and close this one. And we have to catch an error if anything goes wrong, and we have to set this input value default to 0, so it will display in our front end. So that's the second function we have, populating input. Now we can work on the next one. So we'll take this async function and we'll call this perform swap. So this is the function we have which take most of the swap and the main functionality. Inside, simple logic will play. So come back here, we'll take this set transaction pending to true, because by default it will be false. And here we have to take this variable called let receive. We'll say if starting token equal to the ether and destination token is not equal to ETH, in that condition, we have to simply take this recipient and we have to say await swap ETH to token, and we have to simply pass the destination token and the input value, because this data is already there in the state variable, and that's what we are getting and passing into the function, and we'll get the receipt. Else, if like starting token is not equal to ETH and destination token is equal to ETH, then we have to do exactly the same thing, because we have to check for both the condition. So earlier we faced for the destination token, but in this second condition we have to look for the start token and the input value. Else we have to take this recipient and we have to simply call this particular function swap token to token, and we can simply pass the start token, the destination token, and the input value. So these are the three functions we have. First one is swap ether to token, the second one is token to ether, and the third one is token to token, and that's what we have built here. Then we can take this transaction pending is going to be false. We're going to close the pop-up model, and we're going to take this if recipient is there, and if recipient dot has honor property is transaction hash. So we are checking for these two condition, means if recipient is there and if we are not have this transaction hash, then we can notify this recipient, else we can defy this success message. Got it? So once the transaction is completed and we got the receipt, so that's one check we are doing, and we are checking for this transaction hash in this receipt. If we don't have this transaction hash, mean the transaction is failed, then we have to display the error message. Otherwise we have to display the success message. Pretty good. So we're done with this function. Now let's work on the next function, handle insufficient allowance. We can take this notify error, and that we have to simply say insufficient allowance, click increase allowance to increase it. So simple message we are displaying, so user can know that okay, the allowance is not there, so he can click on the button because we are changing the state of the button, and they can click and they can increase the allowance. So that's the notified. Then we can set this set swap button to increase allowance. We are changing the state. So that's the handle increase allowance functions. Pretty good. Now we can come back here. Now we have to simply export the default swap component, and that's the huge component we have built. We have a lot of function, you can see tons of logic we have implemented. So this is the first import we have. Then we have all of this function from our contract. Then we have used this ether token, all of the things. Then we have the icons, and this is the field we're going to build. We have already built this transaction status. This is the toaster we have, and we have already done with that. So let me show you where it is, and there it is. So this is the current wallet, and here we have, you can see this is we have already built. So close this one. The only thing we have to work on this, like this particular field. So where it is, this is done. Now we have to work on this swap field component. Pretty good. This is the default values, all this state we have taken, different object for two different tokens. Then we have the states, notification, address, some of the use state which will going to trigger at the time of page reload and changing the state. And this looks fine, no issue we have. If we find that we have some issue, we can definitely come and change this. This does look good, no problem we have. And this is the transaction, and we have all of this function. So handle swap, this is the first function. Then we have the handle increase allowance function. Then we have this handle reverse exchange. Then we have the get swap button class, so changing the state of the button. Then we have the populate output, and we have a populate input. Then we have this perform swap. So we have all of these three conditions, and at the end we have this function which allow them to increase the allowance. Good, pretty good. Now we have to work on the next component, which is the swap field. This is the one we have to work. Now we have to import the React. Then we have to import the selector. So this is another component we're going to work on it, where we're going to display different token. Select selector. Then we'll take this swap field. We'll call this react.forward ref In that, we're going to receive the data, the object. That's what we are receiving, and we're going to receive this input ref. Let's take a variable. We'll say id value is going to be equal to empty. Then we have to get the set value, default value, and set token and ignore value, and that's all coming from the object. Okay, we are getting the object, then we are deconstructing that. We can come back here, we have to take this return and we have to build the JSX. So we'll take a div, it will have a class, flex, item center, rounded Excel. Inside that, we'll take a input. It will have some property like ref, input ref. Then we'll have the class. We'll say get input class name. This is the function we're going to build. Then we'll say type is going to be a number, value is going to be value, placeholder is going to be default 00. We'll have the on change. On the on change, we have to simply call the set value to e.target.value, and we have to simply close that one, and then we have to simply close this input field. Simple. Now we can come back here. We'll take this selector. This is the component we're going to build. In this, we have to send a couple of properties. So we have to send the ID. We have to send the start token, means the token which user is selected as a start token. And we'll take this default value. We'll take the ignore value. Close the selector. Now we can come back here, close the div. And now we have to come back here and we have to build the function. So we'll take this function get increase class name, because this is the function we are calling in the input. And in that we'll say let class name. Let's take the default classes. So we'll take this width full, outline none, height 8 pixels, padding x 2 pixels, appearance none, text 3 pixel, background transparent. Return is going to be the class, and close that one. So it will automatically apply on the class in the div. Now all we have to do is to simply export this particular swap field component. So we'll say default swap field, and that's the only thing we have to do here. Pretty fine, pretty easy. We have imported this selector which we're going to work now. Here we have received the object and we have deconstructed that. Here we have taken the input, we have passed all the props, we have created this function which we are calling. Then we have the selector, and here we have the function. Now we have to work on the selector. So close this one, come back here in the selector, and let's click on that and let's start working on it. So first we have to import React, use effect, use state. That's coming from React. Then we have to do the internal import. In that we have to take this drop down, and that's coming from the library. Then we have to import all the coins which we already have in the cell token. So coin 1, coin 2, coin 3, coin 4, coin 5, coin 6, coin 7, coin 8, and we have the default value. So we are importing all of this to Utils cell token. So these are the token we are providing. Now we can come back here. We'll take a variable called Selector. In that we're going to receive the props which we have sent it. So we'll receive this default value, ignore value, set token, ID. Now we have to take a state variable. We'll say menu. It's gonna be a kind of array. So in that we have to define this key. So we'll say key ETH, and name is going to be ETH. So that's how we can provide key pair and the name value. Let's do the same thing with all the token. So coin 1 to be coin 1, coin 2 is going to be coin 2, coin 3, coin 3, coin 4, coin 4, coin 5, coin 5, coin 6, coin 6, coin 7, coin 7, and the last one is coin 8, coin 8. And these are the coins we are providing in our array. Now we can come back here. Let's take a state variable. We'll say select item, selected item, and we'll say set selected item. So by default we're not going to select. User will click on the model and they can click and they can select. Now we'll take another one. We'll say menu item, set menu items. By default is going to be get filtered item, and in that we have to pass the ignore value. Once we have that, we can come back here. We'll take the function and call this particular method we have built, get filtered items, and that we have to simply receive the ignore value and the value which we don't want to take except in the swap. So that's what we are doing here. That's a very simple logic. So we have a couple of options. We allow the user to select only from those options, not anything outside of that. So inside that, what we're going to do, we're going to take this return and we'll say menu dot filter, and we already have the entire menu, and we have to do the filtration based on the key because key and the name is both the same, and we have to simply call this ignore value. That's a simple function. Now we can come back here. Let's take this use effect and we'll take this set selected item. By default is going to be a default value, and we'll say default value at the time of page reload. Then we call this use effect. We'll say set menu item to get filtered, and we'll say ignore value, and we have to call this hook whenever there is a change in the ignore value. Then we can come back here. We'll take this return, and now we have to write on the JSX. So we'll take a drop down because this is the component we have imported. This is the drop down we have. Inside that, we'll take this drop down button and let's send a couple of props. So we'll say CSS, means stand for classes. So we'll say background. We'll say selected item equal to default value. Then we have to apply this particular class. Otherwise, we have to go with this. Then closest one. Inside that, we have to take this selected item and we have to close this button, drop down button. Once the user will select, it's going to select that and it will give the particular class. Now it will take this drop down menu and it will display the entire menus, the items. So we'll take this area label to dynamic action. We'll take the item to be menu item. We'll take this on actions, means on the click event what we want to do. We'll say key, and in that we're going to simply call this. We'll take this set selected item is going to be key, means the one he selected. So it will be selected and it will reflect in the component. Then we have to set this set token key to the token name and close this one. And this is the drop menu function we have. In that we have to simply render the entire item. So we have the items. We can simply return. We'll take this drop down item. Let's send the props. So area label ID. Then we have the key, item.key. Then we'll take the color, item.key equal to delete, otherwise error, otherwise default. So these are the simple condition. If the key item.key equal to delete, then we have to display error or default. Close that one, and in that we have to simply display the item.name. You can pick the key because key and the name both has the same value. In that we'll close this drop down item and we'll close this one. Now we have to close this drop down menu. We have to close this drop down and we have to close this entire. Now at the end we have to simply export this particular selector, and that's the only thing we have to do here. Pretty good. We have built all the logic. So these are the import we have done. This is the drop down component. We have all these coins. Then we are receiving the props. We are converting this data into an array. Then we have taken the state variable. Then we have this filter items functions. Then we have this use effect, and we have this drop down models which allow us to open up the model and we can have the data. Close that one. So we are done with this entire swap model. So every single thing is looking fine. No issue we have. So the hero section is done. Let's have a look one more time. So the transaction status is done. The swap field is also done. Close this one and we are done with that. Now we can simply check. So save it, come back to the browser, and here you can see we have the model. If you reload the page, everything is working fine. So you can see, you can click and you can open up the model, and you can click and you can select the token. You can come here, you can select the token of your choice. Everything's working fine. So we are done with this two component header and the hero section. Now what we can do is come back here in the select token And you can see this is the exact token name we are displaying in the front end, because this is the exact name we have given in our contract. So make sure to give the exact name. If you give this HH, this is what is going to reflect here. You can see HH, but remove this one. Otherwise, our function is not going to work. If you come back to the contract, and here you can see this is the exact what we have provided. So looks fine. Now we have these two more components left, card and the footer. So these are the small things we have. Below the page, no issue we have. Things are pretty good. And now we have to work on the card component. Now we can start working on the card component. So this is what we have cut, and we have to simply paste here. So this is the one which we're going to work. So come back here and click on this card. Let's come back here. Come back here in this. Go back to the, close all of these open folders and come back to the components. And here we have the card. So click on this. Now we have to import couple of things. So first we have to import the React use effect, use state, and use ref, and that's coming from React. Then we have to import the user account, that's coming from Ving. Then we have to import the ether package. Then we have to import the toaster. Then we have to import the, let's say, clipboard icon, clipboard checked icon, and we have the plus icon, and that's all coming from the hero icons. Now we can come back here. Let's do the internal import. We'll say import SingleCard transaction status, and it's coming from index. Then we have to import the get token address function. Then we have to get the token balance function. Then we have to get this increase allowance, and that's coming from the util context. Then we can take this card component. In that we have to take a state variable. So we'll take this address, and that's coming from this use address. Then we'll take this return, and we have to build the JSX. So let's take a section. It will have a class padding y 6 pixels, small screen padding y 12, and we'll have a background color is going to be our alpha color, text gray 100. Inside the section we have to take a div. It will have a class called container, padding 6, max like margin x auto, space y 8 pixels. Then we have div. It will have a class called space y2. Inside the div we have to take h2. It will have a class called text 3 pixels, font bold, and we'll call this all listed token for sale. That's going to be the title of the component. Inside that, here we have to take the p. It will have a class called fonts, serif, text small, text gray 400. In that we can say this dummy text, and close the pay tag. Take close this div. Take a div. It will have a class called grid. Grid calls ones, gap for x 4 pixels, gap y 8 pixels. On a medium device we'll say grid column 2, and on a large device grid column 4. So we can display the different card. I'll take this single card. In that we have to assign this index and the name of the token and the wallet address. And all we have to do is to replicate this card a couple of times. So let me do it very quickly. Now simply close the div. So we have all of this card with the token and the addresses. You can do this in multiple way. You can do it with the array, but I'll go with this approach. So we'll simply close the div. Now we can simply close the div, close the section, and at the end we have to simply export this entire component, card component. So we are done with this. We don't need to do anything at all. We are done with this. So we have all of this import, icons import, this component, the single card. This is what we have. We have the address, and this is the entire JSX. And now we have to work on the single card and receive all of these props. Name, wallet address. So we have done with all of this token. Now come back here in the single card and let's start working on that. So let's import React, use effect, use state, and use ref. Then we have to import the get token address function. get token balance function, and increase allowance function, and that's coming from util context. Then we have to import the ether package, import the transaction, and that's coming from the transaction. Then we have to import the toaster, and it's coming from the hot toaster. Then let's do the import for the clipboard icon, clipboard check icon, and we have a plus icon, and that's coming from our hero icon react outline. Then we can take this variable called SingleCard. In that we have to receive the props like index, name, and wallet address. Then we have to take a state variable called balance, set balance, and by default we'll have an empty. Then we'll take the token address, and we'll have this. Then take a variable called copy icon, set copy icon, and by default we'll display this copy icon. Let's take a variable called transaction pending, set transaction pending to be false by default. Then we'll take a variable called notify because we have to display the error message. We'll toaster error, we'll pass the message and duration. Then we have to check this notify success. We'll take this toaster success, and we'll say once the transaction is successful, we'll say transaction completed. Then we can take this use effect, and that we have to take this if statement. If name and the wallet address is there, then we have to simply call this particular function fetch token balance and fetch token balance address, token address. Else we can set the token balance to be the empty, and we have to call this hook whenever there is a change in the name and the address. Simple logic we have built. This is the exact logic we have built in the different component. Now we can come back here. Let's build the function. So we'll take this async function. We'll call it fetch token balance, and we already have the function. So we'll take a variable called balance, await token balance, and that we have to pass the name of the token and the wallet address. Same thing I have to do with, I'll take the balance, and we have to simply convert that in ether in a decimal point, and then we have to simply set the balance to the state variable. Then we have to work with the token address. Let's say fetch token address. We have to simply call the function. We'll say get token address and the name. We'll pass the address and set that. So this is the very simple thing we have. So we had these two functions, fetch token balance and fetch token address. Once we have these two data, now we have to simply build the return statement. So we'll take this return, and we have to work on the JSS. So we'll take this article element. You can take this section, it's totally up to you, but I will go with this article because that's more SU friendly. So it will have a class called flex column background second alpha. Inside this article we'll take an anchor, and it will have the role, no opener, no referrer. Then we'll have the href, nowhere need to be redirect. Area label is going to be a dummy text. Close that one. Let's take an image, and we'll take this alt is going to be empty. We'll have a class called object fit cover, full width, height 62, background gray 500. Then we'll take the source. So we all the images provide to all of you guys. So we'll take this image slash index i+1, and we'll have the png, and close that one. So this is our image. Now we have to display the data. So we'll take this div. It will have a class called flex column, flex1, padding 6. Inside that we have to take an anchor. Let's assign the property. Then we have to take the href nowhere, area label, close this one, and take another one. And let's assign the classes and close this one. And here we're going to display the name, and we can display the total supply. So like we are displaying total supply we have for the token is 10 million. And come back here, let's take H3 and we'll take this flex one, padding y2 pixels, text large, font semi bold, lead. Inside that we have to display this get, we have to display the token name, and we have to display this limited supply available, some sort of urgency for the user. And simply close this one, H3. Then you can come back here, we'll take a div, it will have a class called flex, margin x 2 pixels, padding top 10 pixels. Inside the div, we'll take this div, it will have a class called flex, item center, background zing 90, text zing 300, width fit 2 pixels, padding x 3 pixels, rounded L large. Inside the div, we'll take the p, it will have a class called text small, we'll display the name of the token, and we'll display the p, it will have a class called bz jink 800, padding 0.5, text 3, padding x 3, margin left 3 pixels, rounded large, text zinc 100. It will have the balance is available for the user, and we'll go close this one. Close the div. Now we'll take another div. It will have a class called flex, item center, padding 2 pixels, padding x 2 pixels, background is going to be third alpha, rounded right large, and we have the icon, copy icon. Let's send the props. So we have the prop like class name, height, cursor pointer. We'll have the on click, and in that we're going to pass the address of the token. So we'll take this navigator dot clipboard, write text, we have the token address, and we'll call this set copy icon, and we'll change the state once the user will copy the address. We'll display the tick icon and close this one. Close this one and close the div. Close the div. Close the div and close the article. And at the end we have to simply export this single card component, and that's it. So we're done with this entire card component. First we have imported this, then this, important hooks, then the icons. We have taken the state variables for the icons, for the pending, then we have the error, then we have this functions. So this is the internal function we have, and we have all of this. Pretty good. Okay, if you stuck and if you find any kind of error, make sure to pause the video and try to watch and see the classes. So looks good. Supply, this is the name, and here we have the balance, and this is the closest one, and here we have the icon, so the user can click on the address. Pretty good. So we are done with this. Hope you guys have followed that. Close this one. We are done with this card component. Close this one, and we are done with this all three component. Now come back to the browser, and here we have all of the things. Looks fine. You can see we have the title, we have each one of the card with the image, with the total supply, the message, and the component, so like the balance, the name of the token, and the entire thing looks fine. If you click here we have provided that, and that's what you can see. You can copy, you can see T, you can come here, paste here, this is the address of the particular token, copy and paste here, this is the address of this particular token, so BNB. So things are looking pretty fine. You can click, and if I come back here, I'm already connected with the Mumbai, so even I can test that, I can buy some token. So let me do one thing, let me first disconnect. You can see I can disconnect with the application, and we have this dash, means we are not connected. Let's connect with the wallet. Pretty good. Now I want to simply do one thing. Now we can, looks fine. Come back here, close this one, and now we have to work on the next component. This is the footer one. So click on that. So first we have to import React, then we have to do the internal import. We have to import the Twitter, Facebook, Insta logo, and that's all coming from our icons. So we already provided you this icon. Then let's take a variable called footer component, and let's take a variable called footer, and we have to define the menu which we want to render. So it's going to be an array. So we'll say feature is integration, pricing, FAQ. Let's take the second footer menu. This will be privacy, terms of service, and let's take this return, and we have to write the JSX. So let's take a footer tag, and it will have a class called padding x 4 pixels, divided y, background alpha, text gray 100. Inside that we'll take a div. It will have a class called container flex column, justify between padding y 10 pixels, margin x, auto space y 8 pixels, large device will say flex row, and a large space y 0. It will have a div. Inside that we'll take a div. It will have a class called large, we'll say width 1/3. Inside the div we'll take an anchor, and we have to display the logo. So we'll take this none opener, no referrer. We don't need to redirect anywhere. We'll have a class called flex, justify center, space x3, and on large screen we'll say justify start. Close this one. And we have to take a div. It will have a class called flex item center, justify center, width 12, height 12, rounded full, and background is going to be BG wallet 400. Inside the div we have to take the logo. So the logo is already given to all of you guys, and that's what we have to simply copy and close the div. So this is the first section we have. Now we have to simply take a span, and we'll say self center, text 2XL, font semi bold, text gray 500. We'll take the crypto swap, close the span, close the anchor, and close the div. So that's the first set of component we have. Now we have to work on the menu. So we'll take a div. It will have a class called grid columns 2, text small, gap x3 pixels, gap y 8 pixels, large device will have width 2/3, small screen git column 4. Inside the div we'll take a div. It will have a class called space y 3 pixels. Inside the div we'll take a h3. It will have a class called trick, uppercase, text, color is going to be our third alpha, and we'll say product. We'll take this UL. We'll have a class called space y 1 pixels, text gray 550. Inside this UL we have to take a footer menu. We'll run a loop. We'll say menu index, and we have to do the instant return. So we'll have this li, we have to assign the key, and we have to assign this anchor. We don't need to redirect anywhere. We'll take this menu, close anchor, and we have to close this li. We have to close this dynamic block, and we have to close this UL. So this is our menu list. Now we have to simply close this div. So this is the second menu list, first menu list we have. Now we have to work on the third one. We'll take a div. It will have a class space y3. We'll take this h3, trick, uppercase, text will have alpha, and we'll say company. We'll take this UL, apply the same classes. We'll take this dynamic one, privacy, terms of service. We'll run a loop, and we'll take a li, assign the key, and inside that we'll take this anchor. Let's assign the menu, and simply close this anchor and li. Simple. Close this one. Now we have to simply close the dynamic block, and now we have to, the last close we're going to do is UL, and the last one is the div. Close this one. Now we have to work on the last menu. So we'll take the div. It will have a class space y3, same thing, uppercase alpha color developer. We'll take the UL space y3, text gray 50, and take a data. So public API documentation guide, and we have to run a loop, and we have to simply render from the menu li. Close the li, close the dynamic block and the ul and the div ul, and the last one is the div. So this is our dynamic block. Now come back here. Let's take a div. It will have a class called space y3, and we have to display the social media icons. We'll take a div. It will have a class called uppercase text alpha social media, and we already have the icons. So we'll take a div. It will have a class called flex justify start space x3 text gray 50. We'll take the anchor. Flex item center padding 1, and we have to display the Facebook icon. Close that one, close this, and we have to simply replicate it 3 times. So let me do it very quickly. Now we have to close the div. So I've simply replicated 3 times for all the social media icons. Let's close the div. Div, close the div, and close the div. And the last div, where we're going to display the copyright. So we'll say padding y6 pixels, text small, text center, border will have our alpha color, border top, and we'll have this gray 400. We'll take this 2006, the blockchain coder, hold the copyright, and we'll close the div, close the footer component, and at the end we have to simply export the component. So we are done with this entire homepage and the footer component. Pretty good. Hope you guys can see that how things are coming together. We have this import, then we have the icons, footer menus, and these are the things we have, the logo. So this is the logo section, this is the first menu item, and this is the copyright. So close that one, and looks pretty good. Save it, come back to the browser, and here we have the footer, all of the menus, social media icons, and the footer. That looks fine. Reload the page, everything is good. Now we can test this out. So as you can see that in my first account I already have this much Medicoin. If you don't have, make sure to get that, then you can able to do the swap. So let's come back here. First I have to get the token. So I want to swap from ETH to different token. So I want to go with very little amount, like 0.02, and I want to select my output token to be USD coin. And you can see in this amount, like 0.02, I will get 200 USD coin. So I want to go a little less. Let's make it 1 and get it 10. If I click on swap, I can easily able to make the transaction here, the pop-up model, and click on confirm, and the transaction is happening. So click here, swap ETH, the transaction is taking place. No issue we have. Just wait, after the transaction will complete, you can able to find some of the USD coin in your address, and the transaction is completed. So the pop-up model is also working fine. If you reload the page, and here you can see you have 10 USD coin. You have successfully swapped the token with ETH to USDC. Pretty good. And if you come back here you will find the balance as well. Now I want to swap from Shiba Inu. So let's come here, let's select the Shiba Inu, and I want to take it very less. So let's give it 3, and I will get 3. Click here and let me get some Shiba Inu, and I have to simply confirm the transactions, and boom, here we are making the transaction. When the transaction will completed, I will have some Shiba Inu token. So just a moment, the transaction will complete soon. And here the transaction is completed. Reload the page and here you will have the Shiba Inu in your wallet address, and that's the information you will find right up here. Now I want to swap from USDT to Shiba Inu because that's the feature we have, token to token. So we have seen from ETH to token. Now let's do with token to token. So it looks good. Let's come back here and let's select this USD coin, and I want to get some Shiba Inu. Select this one, and now I want to get 5. So I want to swap 5 token from Shiba Inu to Shiba Inu. So if I click this swap, you can see that's what we have. If I click this swap, it will first call the increment function. So it's going to call this particular, say insufficient allowance, click increase allowance to increase. So first I have to increase the allowance, then I can able to make the swap. So let's increase the allowance, and here you can see I'm increasing the allowance to 5. Next, approve. So once the allowance got increased, well, now after that we can easily able to swap the token. And here the transaction went through, and now you can simply call the swap. If you click on swap, the transaction will take place, and now you can able to swap the token from USDT to Shiba Inu. And just a moment, the transaction is taking a little bit time, and finally the transaction completed. If you reload the page right now, you will have 8 Shiba Inu and 5 USD's coin, and all the information you will find right up here. So I believe that everything is clear to all of you guys. All the feature we have included is absolutely working fine. Now we have to work on the next page, and that's the last page we have. So close this one, where we're going to display all the history of the transaction. So come back here in the token, and that's what we have to work next. So let's come back here. Let's import React, use effect, use state, and that's coming from React. Then we have to do the internal import. We have to import the footer, header, and table, and that's coming from the component index. Then we have to import the get all history function, which we are coming from the context. Let's build the token page, and we'll take this history, set history, it's gonna be an array. Then we'll take this load data. We can call the function, we'll say data await get all history. Once we have the data, we have to simply set the data in a reverse because we can display the latest transaction, and close that one. So this way our data will call and it will be set in the state variable. Now let's take this use effect, and we have to simply call this particular function. So we'll say load data at the time of page reload. Simple. Let's build the JSX. You can simply console log out. Let's build the JSX. We'll take this div, it will have a class, and we'll have a background color to alpha. Inside that we have to display the head. Inside that we have to display our header component. Then we have to display our div. It will have a class called padding 80 pixels from top. Inside that we'll display the table. It will have all the data as a prop history. And we have to simply close the div, and then we have to display the footer component, close the div, and we have to simply export the component, export default to token, and that's the only thing we have to do. The only thing component we have to build is the table component. So we have all of this import, no problem. We are getting this is the only component we have left. We are getting the data, we are setting, and then passing it. So simply comment this one, and if I come back here, if I go to this token, you can see we have the header, we have the footer, only we have to work on the component. Come back, let's bring it back, and let's start working on the table. Click on that. So here we are in the table page. So here we are in the table component. Let's import React. Let's create the table component, and that we have to receive the props, means the entire array. Then we have to build the JSX. So we'll take a div, it will have a class called container padding 2, margin X auto, small screen padding 4 pixels, text gray 100, background color is going to be our second alpha. Inside the div we have to take h2, it will have a class called margin border 4 pixels, text 2xl, font semi bold, lead, and that will say recent transaction 2. Then we have to take a div, it will have a class called overflow X auto. Inside the div We'll take a table. It will have a class called min width full text small. Inside the table we have to take its call group, and we'll take this call to simply replicate it 5 times. Let's assign the class to the last one. We'll say width 24. So because 5 columns we're displaying, and it will have the data. Simply close this one. Then we have to take this head. It will have a class called bg third alpha. We'll have the tr. It will have a class called text left. In that we'll have this th class will padding 3. It will have an id. This will be user. This will be from. This will be to. We'll say padding 3 text right input. And we'll have the output value, and we can display the status and close this one. Now close the head. We already have the data history. We have to simply map and loop over it. So we'll say history index, and we have to make it instant return. So we have this tr. Let's assign the key i+1. Let's take the class border bottom, border opacity 20, border gray 700, background our third alpha. Close that one. Inside that we have to display the table body data. It will have a class padding 3. In that we can display the p. It will have the data, and close that one. The same thing we have to do, simply replicate couple of times. So let me do that. And the last one we have is the status. So just a moment. We'll take a span, and we have to display the button type of things. So we'll take this spanning x3, padding y1, font semi bold, rounded, medium. Background is going to be our third alpha, and text gray 900. Inside that we can display the status. So we'll say spam complete, and we can simply close our span and close the table body. Close the tr. Now we'll close the dynamic block, close the table body, table dev, and close the div. And at the end we have to simply export the table component. And with that we are done with this entire project. So you can see this is the entire component for our table. We are getting the array, and we are simply rendering the data. Close this one. This is the header, the data, and here we have the data like id, token, all the things we have. Pretty good. Now close this one, and that looks fine. Save it, come back to the browser, and here you can see, and we got the data. So we have done 3 transactions. You can see the from and to, the input value, the output value. And if I come back here, if I do the Uniswap, and if I want to get from ETH, let's get some 5. Let's make the transaction. Here I'm making the transactions, confirm, and the transaction is happening. Here you can see it looks pretty good. No issue we have. So far things are looking good. The transaction is taking a little bit time, but the transaction will complete soon. And here the transaction is completed, and finally reload the page. If you come back here you will find 50 token. So there it is, Uniswap 15, copy, and you can check the address. Looks good. Come back here in the token and you can see the detail, the transaction we have done just now. So we got this 50 Uniswap and we give ether, and this looks good. Wonderful. So this one is really powerful project. I hope you guys have understood that how things are working. You can build this and you can sell token. So I believe that you guys can understand that how powerful this project is. You can build this, you can launch it, you can allow the user to come and buy a token and they can use it. So if you want to do the marketing, you can collaborate with a different token platform where they can ask them to take your token and they can use, other user can use your token to purchase something in the platform. So you can collaborate, and that's how you can expand your business if you launch this particular project. So come back here in the blockchain coder. Here you will find the source code and the starter file. So simply come here and search for, let's say, Uniswap. So here we have this 3 Uniswap project. This one is the complete from beginner to advanced, where we have built every single thing from start to end. Here we have the integration part, and here we have this marketplace. So click on that. You can simply watch the video in which I have explained that once you will download the source code, how you can do and how you can run the application. So you can watch this video where I have shown you all the setups, so you can follow that. You can click here and you can get the final source code on the starter file. So if you take the final code, it would be great support for our team to bring this kind of tutorials, because you know that making tutorials takes a lot of effect for editing, recording, and using the technology. So that would be great support if you guys take and give some sort of contribution in growing our community. So that looks fine, and I hope you guys have subscribed me in the channel. So make sure to come and you can check all the videos which I publish very frequently. You can come back to the playlist and you can see all the project we have, like Web3, AI chatbot, MetaMask clones, we have token staking platform, NFT marketplace, ICO, all of this project we have. I want you to come and have a look, check everything from your end. We are done with this entire project. If you have any confusion, any doubt, do let me know in the comment section. I'll definitely help you in that. And again, if you guys have encountered any problem, I would recommend you to check the starter file, try to rewatch the video, and try to install the exact npm package version we have installed in this project. So with that, I'm ending this video. I believe that you guys have learned something new, and make sure to share this video with your friends, those who are interested in Web3. That will help me to grow this channel. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.